Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome back to Inside Unreal, a show where we learn, explore, and celebrate everything Unreal. I am your host, and welcome back to Indie Games Week 2026. For any folks who aren't familiar, Indie Games Week is a week of exclusive interviews with indie teams and insightful live streams like this one, full of dev tips and workflow insights. Throughout this week, we will spotlight indie studios worldwide using Unreal Engine and the Epic ecosystem to power ambitious ideas and deliver standout games. Plus, the Fab Spring Sale kicks off with thousands of discounted products to help independent developers get started faster. This is day 3 of 4 consecutive live streams we have for you this week. And if you missed either Tuesdays or Wednesdays sessions, you can view them on demand on either our YouTube or Twitch channel at Unreal Engine. On Tuesday, we had the folks from Deepfield Games and Vaulted Sky Games join us to talk about their projects and how Epic Online Services helped them incorporate and utilize various online functions within their games. This was a great session full of valuable insight, and we definitely recommend checking it out. On Wednesday, we had several folks from Timberline Studio join us to talk about their game, Bistro, and dove deep into the systems that they used to create their game, custom tooling, and extensive use of Sequencer, and how they ended up settling on these charming, crunchy, cozy themes and mechanics. We had an absolutely fantastic time with these teams and really suggest checking those sessions out. But with that, let's move on to the topic at hand, which is creating high-fidelity digital humans on a small budget with MetaHuman, and get our guests introduced. Hey, folks, how you doing?
Doing well, doing well.
Hello.
How you
Awesome.
doing? You good?
Doing great, doing great. This has been a very fun week, and I'm looking forward to this session. We're gonna have a good time here. So
Yeah, we are.
let's start with you, Tony. How are you doing? Why don't you introduce yourself to the folks? Let them know who you are, and
Sure.
yeah.
And yeah, well, hey everyone, I'm Tony. I'm the MetaHuman product director, which basically means that it's kind of my job to make sure that what we deliver as MetaHuman is a worthwhile product for everybody out there. And so I've been with Epic now for really since the beginning of MetaHuman, previously with a company called Cubic Motion. So I've been in the image space for quite a long time now. And I've seen MetaHuman evolve over that time, which has just been, been incredible. Yeah, that's me, Dan.
Awesome, awesome. And we have Sir. Sir, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Excuse me.
Hello, my name is Sir. My first name is Sir. I go by Sir Wade online. So if anybody's come across a YouTube video from someone who looks like me, that was me. I'm a character animator and an online content creator. I do a lot of historically very character animation centric content, but these days I do a lot of professional training around Unreal as well because I do a lot of my work in Unreal. Kind of by accident. I used to work a lot in other DCCs, but kept finding that I just spend more and more time playing with the Unreal tools to the point that now it's kind of my primary go-to for freelance projects and for my own sort of explorations. So
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, both of you, and Sir specifically for putting this together. I know it's been quite an undertaking, so we seriously appreciate you putting this together and coming on to talk MetaHuman and MetaHuman animation and all that fun stuff. With that, do we have a brief synopsis of what we're going to be kind of covering here today?
totally. I'm going to go through a bunch of the different stuff that I wish I had known sooner when I started working with MetaHumans and making my typically cinematic geared projects. This will obviously work for games, whether it's game cinematics or just gameplay. Working with MetaHumans, there's a lot to know. And so I've got a bit of an overview here for you. I'm going to go through some of the basics of just how MetaHumans work, how they're constructed. That way, if you've literally never touched them, you'll get a sense of like, oh, that's what that is, and that's what that's meant to do, and just a good foundation. After that, I'm going to jump into some motion capture, retargeting, and live streaming data demos. That way you can kind of see how metahumans are meant to be used with motion capture tools. And I'll also show you how to work with just actual animation data, whether you grab it from Fab, make it yourself with a suit, or if you wanted to hand key something, which most people probably don't, but there are some really handy workflows that no matter what sort of system in Unreal you're coming from or familiar with, MetaHumans can take advantage of all of that. So I'm going to show a few different examples of that. And at the very end, just a rapid fire of tips and tricks and little gotchas that I feel like everybody should get a good handle on to avoid those sort of every now and then issues that'll pop up when you least expect it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I'm super excited to jump into all this. I have a quick thing that I will say just at the top. For anybody watching this live, if you have any questions for either Tony or Sir, please leave them in the comment section with, in brackets, question followed by your question. Please keep these questions related to MetaHuman, MetaHuman Animator, pretty much what we're talking about today. If you have any other feedback, any general ecosystem things, Unreal Engine, any sort of thing like that, please head over to the EDC, the Epic Developer Community, where we have forums, documentation, and plenty of resources that will hopefully help you get squared away for anything outside of the purview of this topic at hand. Before we jump into the actual demonstration, I think we had a little bit more that we wanted to cover, Tony, before we jump in.
Yeah, just be good to take a couple of minutes. I mean, I'm as keen to hear from Sir Wade as everybody, because learning from the community is how we learn. You know, it may shock you to realize that we don't know it all on the MetaHuman team, and it's always amazing to see, you know, what people like Sir Wade are doing. Yeah, I just wanted to say that, you know, what matters to us is what the community does with MetaHuman, and I'm constantly amazed by what small teams and solo devs can do with this technology. It may not be apparent to everyone, but this month marks our 5th anniversary. It's 5 years since we launched MetaHumans, and the journey from where we started to where we are now is something I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes just recapping on. So 5 years ago, if you were a small team or a solo developer and you wanted believable digital human in your game, you had a couple of options, really. If you had the expertise, you spent the time building and animating one from scratch, or maybe you paid someone to do that for you. Alternatively, you had to tackle the fact that you would modify your artistic ambition and settle for something that maybe wasn't your original vision. That was a trade-off, really. It was one of fidelity versus feasibility. That was the battle that artists were having. It's kind of why we released MetaHuman. We launched back in 2021, and it was with MetaHuman Creator as an accessible, easy-to-use, cloud-based tool with a workflow that guided artists with knowledge of human appearance gained from real-world data. So we've spent a lot of time trying to capture reality so that we can help artists deliver on their artistic vision, safe in the knowledge that, you know, the system is there to aid them with that process. And for the first time, anyone could create a photorealistic, fully rigged digital human. Really quickly. Basically, we were turning months of work into weeks, weeks into days, and days into hours kind of thing. And we saw literally millions of metahumans being created. I mean, they were popping up in all kinds of spaces. It was just incredible to see. And we followed that then with MetaHuman Animator. A few of us are in the business of building statues. And so how our character moves and emotes is as much a part of the character as it looks. With MetaHuman Animator, we went from you need professional performance capture to you need a webcam. We had facial animation now from a phone that rivals professional systems. And as of last year, it does that in real time. Together with the flexibility to process animation from video or just audio now, if you don't have a capture facility, that really starts to change things. And I think Sir Wade is going to show you just the kind of things that people can do. I mean, literally in a room. Last year, we moved character creation into Unreal Engine itself. Now, the web app was a very accessible, frictionless way for people to experience digital humans, metahumans, but it did come with some challenges. Metahumans need to be constructed and managed as first-class citizens of your project, not somewhere outside of that. So this enabled us to tie MetaHuman Creator properly into the engine, whilst retaining the elegance of the workflows that we've begun in the web application. And along with Creator in Unreal Engine, same some big improvements to fidelity of characters, bodies you could actually design, actually had some bodies for once, a wardrobe system to help you work with your own clothing and grooms. And at the same time, we continue to work on the performance whilst balancing that with fidelity, with the optimized metahumans. And we continue to do that work. It's really important to us that not only are they beautiful, but they're also viable and usable across platforms. We also introduced the MetaHuman channel on Fab so that now anyone can access MetaHuman compatible clothing, grooms, accessories, as well as all complete metahumans to use and customize in your project. You don't have to be able to build everything. You don't have to be skilled in everything. You know, you can leverage this ecosystem. In the spirit of enabling anybody, we also shared other tooling. more complicated tooling, but this was in-house tooling that we'd use. So expression editor in Maya and the groom tools in Houdini. Really so that whoever you are, whatever you're creating, whatever platform you're on, you have the best shot at creating the best MetaHuman. 5 years in, MetaHuman isn't a tool, it's a pipeline for digital creation, animation, and performance. Again, as Suede is going to show you, and is rapidly becoming a standard for digital humans. MetaHumans exist to make character quality accessible. And this success of titles like Expedition 33. So it's not just for big studios. So I really hope you can pick up MetaHuman. You can start using MetaHumans if you're not. You can find great new ways, wonderful new ways, crazy new ways of using MetaHumans. Fidelity has always underpinned MetaHuman. And our goal is to make sure that fidelity is available to anyone. Sorry if that sounds like a sale pitch, but I absolutely love what we do. And I really am passionate about, delivering that kind of thing to anyone. The last thing for me, before I hand over to Wade, is if you're enjoying this live stream, we actually have another live stream coming on April the 24th. Dan, I think you've got to make me a live. Okay, April the 24th it is. Yep. This one's going to be focused on fashion and clothing MetaHumans using Marvelous Designer. And it's a co-stream with our friends at Clo. So if you enjoy this, definitely check this one out because it's going to be awesome. Anyway, we've got another awesome one here today. So I'm going to hand back to you, Dan, and to Suede. Thank you for that.
No, thank you. That's such a great recounting of the history and the story here. And I know that I had this reaction. I saw a couple people in chat going like, "How has it already been 5 years?"
Yeah, I know. We think this all the time. It's just blows our mind. It feels like yesterday since we launched this thing. So, but then to be honest, we look at the catalog of things that other people are doing with MetaHuman, and honestly, we feel like we're having to catch up with people. People are doing some amazing things, and we're like, "Oh my god, how do we do that? How did they do that?" It's just, it's incredible. So,
well, really and a lot has also, come from that 5 years. It's easy to look at that 5 years and go like, "Wow, it's hard to believe it's been that long." But then you also kind of ran through like everything that's been accomplished within that period of time, and it's not an insignificant amount of things.
Yeah, and we're not a huge team at Epic. We're a finite-sized team. We have to prioritize things, and I know, sometimes we don't necessarily get that right. We don't necessarily deliver what it is that people are wanting from us, but we're always trying to iterate, always trying to engage with people, and we're always trying to make MetaHumans that framework that maybe you don't use it all, maybe you're trying to create some hybrid character, but there should be bits of MetaHuman which help you along that way, and over time we hope more and more of MetaHuman works for you.
Yeah, we had a really cool example of that too, actually just with the stream that we had yesterday, where the characters in that are very stylized. They're kind of anthropomorphic animals and things like that, but they were still using the MetaHuman face rig with their characters, which was super cool to see.
Yeah, it's surprising sometimes. Even the most I talk to teams and they say, "Oh yeah, we're using MetaHumans. Look, all that," and you think, "Oh, okay, cool." Access to MetaHuman Animator is a key thing for a lot of teams because it's such a powerful tool. It gives such great animation out the bat, and even the animation, we need to polish and tweak and creatively adjust the animation. It's a great basis to work from. One of the keys I told the team at the time was this animation doesn't have to just be good fidelity. It has to be the kind of animation that an animator who likes you gave you, not full of rubbish keys. It's something you can start with. It mustn't just look like, it works, but if you touch any of these keys, it's all gone wrong. It's got to be stuff that, we know we've not got it spot on for everybody. We know they need to be able to work with that animation. So, but yeah, MetaHuman Animator has been a big part of MetaHuman, but there's so many things that, it's bigger than the sum of its parts. That's the key with MetaHuman.
Yeah. Well, a lot of love for it in the chat. We're definitely looking forward to doing this. Sir, I know we have a ton to talk about. Are you ready to jump in? Do we have anything else we want to cover before we kind of hop in here?
I am ready.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, welcome again, everybody. Jumping right into some visual fun. MetaHumans, yay! I'm assuming everybody here knows what they are. We heard a wonderful explanation of some of the work that went into creating these characters. And I just wanted to start off by sort of showing you some of the advanced stuff. We're going to build up to this, but working with MetaHumans, there are so many different ways to do it. As an animator myself, I like to get in there and mess with all the controls. I know that not everybody wants to actually individually manipulate joints, but there's so much you can do. And so many of the questions that I've already seen in the chat, that are going to be answered by little tweaks and little things that we can play with inside of the MetaHuman system. And there's other great tools by the community to help us do that. I wanted to shout this one out right off the bat just because it's so fun and visual. This big, colorful collection you see on the right is the Locodrome Picker. It's free. It's something you can find on Fab. You can find it on Gumroad. And I think the creator is actually giving a talk at Unreal Fest this year, or doing a lab. I think he and I are both going to be there hanging out. And so, anyways, I just want to show you this. This is a really fun way to interact with metahumans. I'm going to get to the actual, like, starting from the basics in a second. But just to show you, these characters are fast, they're fun, and when you know how to work with them, they can be really, really, they can alleviate a lot of the problems that you might run into with just sort of the, how many different systems there are to play with in Unreal. This one is sort of built to work with all the native features in Unreal. So we have our little guy here. Now, I want to start at the beginning, like I said. I am in a project here that is largely composed of stuff that you can find on Fab for free. So various things free for the month that I've grabbed, so these backgrounds and things like that. But I want to start off with a simple MetaHuman character. I guess right off the bat, I should also mention that to work with metahumans in Unreal natively, there are some plugins that you might want to enable. If you just type in MetaHuman in the plugins, you can see that there's a whole bunch of stuff. You don't necessarily need to have all these things depending on what you're doing, but since I'm showing you all the different features, let's just assume that we want all the different plugins for the most part. MetaHuman Animator is going to be a big one. The MetaHuman Core Tech and MetaHuman Creator is how we actually create metahumans. And I also want to throw a quick heads up that when you install Unreal, at least in my experience, I think this is accurate still. I don't think it comes pre-installed with all the MetaHuman Creator core tools by default, because not everybody needs to create metahumans depending on what you're doing, and it's a lot of extra space. But if you're like, hey, no, that's me, I want to play with it. And when you do your installation, I'm working in 5.7.4, but whatever version you're using, you hit this little dropout, you go to options, and then you've got your different components. And this MetaHuman Creator core data, an extra 6 gigs, this is something you want to check on if you want to create metahumans and you've not done this before. You probably will need that. So probably don't want to click it right this moment. This isn't necessarily a follow along, but I wanted to flag that because if you don't have that installed, then you won't be able to turn on this plugin of the core tech itself. So those two go hand in hand. From there, though, you're ready to go. I like to make a folder in my content drawer called MetaHuman or MetaHumans. And if you wanted to create one from scratch, the most up-to-date way to do this is to right-click. You go to the MetaHuman pop-out, which this will only show up if you've got all the plugins turned on. And then you've got a MetaHuman character. There's other stuff in here that is super useful that we're going to talk about. But if we just go to MetaHuman character, this is how you can create a brand new MHC underscore. Let's give him a name. Somebody throw a name in chat. Who wants to name our MetaHuman character? You can also use the system, by the way, to sort of just pop out a preset. There's lots of presets you can just use rather than having to make one from scratch. But if you want to have the fun, this is where you go. Let's see if there's any names that have popped into chat yet. I think I might be delayed.
we have a Bob. We got a Bob.
Bob it is.
Bob was first in.
All right. Bob it is. Fun fact for everybody. As live streams always do, things always like to go wrong at the last second. I had a hard drive, or I had my server with some files to show you guys, and that drive crashed this morning. On it, I had a character that I had spent some time making. His name was Screwdriver, and I wish you could have met him, but that's okay. He looks like a screwdriver.
We'll have to just embody the spirit of Screwdriver in Bob.
That's right. So this is the MetaHuman character sort of creator asset. When you create your MetaHuman character, we'll asset down here in the viewport or in the content drawer, it'll open up to this. And this interface, I'm not going to go through and show you every little button. There are various tutorials, but I want to give you just a general sense of what this does. When you want to create a MetaHuman, you can see the way that this is sort of constructed. MetaHumans are this really intelligently let's call it like templatized way of building a creator of a character, where the different parts of the face are all mapped and have skin weights and all kinds of different stuff going on. And if you want to create a character from scratch, you could just go up to the presets and we could just double click on one of these characters and it'll just give us one of the built-in MetaHuman characters. Super quick, super easy. But if you wanted to go from scratch, there's a body zone, there's a head zone, and in each of these zones, you have access to all the different characters that are already in here. And what my favorite way to do with this is, let's say we were creating Bob, and maybe Bob's a bigger guy. So we can take Bo here, and we'll say, let's take some inspiration from Bo. But maybe I want Bob to also be really, really muscular. So if I find a character who's maybe a bit more built and like who's working out. Trey looks like he works out. Actually, Orlando looks like he works out more. Orlando here. And then let's find another character that gives us something different. I think Walter's an older character, so let's make sure we've got some experience, some years of wisdom to factor in. And when we have these different blend presets, it gives you a really quick way that for every part of the body identified by these little markers, you can just sort of click and drag, and whichever way you drag, it'll sort of map to whichever character you put on that little wheel. And you can blend in between them. So if you want something kind of in between all three, you can just start shaping. And as you go, I would recommend that you make sure to utilize the 3D view because things look different from the different angles. So, if you can't tell the depth of the chest, for example, like here, if we want kind of like a sunken look, or if we want more of that like working out build, we can sort of see that better from a 3/4 view rather than just the front. So you want to make sure you're moving around. Now I could keep playing with this, but you get the idea. I want to go on to the head. Actually, I guess I should say before I move from the body, newer features. In the body area, there's a blend mode, and then there's also a model mode, which has all these parametric settings. This is really handy if you have very specific measurements you need your character to hit. If you need a certain height because you built your environment already and you know you need really short characters, you could start messing with things like height, and we could just crank this way, way down. And so depending on what you want to do, if I were to take one of these sliders and then just push it down, you'll see you can do that. And it'll create this little line showing you, hey, you've tweaked this, just so you know. So you know exactly, like, I don't know what's an example here. The front inner thigh length, whatever that is, of the upper torso. Like, I'm not entirely sure what that means. If you play with it, it'll affect that attribute, and then it'll give you a little indicator of like where you should be looking. And then I also just want to give a heads up. The reason that my computer is having a little bit of a hard time is not because of the system, it's actually very fast. It's because I have multiple copies of Unreal open and about 4 other 3D tools that I'm working with happening all at once for this live stream. So it's a little encumbered, let's say. Oops, where'd I go?
We've asked quite a lot for this live stream, so.
There we go. So you can see that is the, as they call it, the front inner thigh, I think that's called. Front inner thigh is how you pronounce that length. And if you're like, no, wait, I didn't want to change that one, you can just unpin the changed value. And this is one of the newer features in MetaHuman, that you have the ability to tweak all these different settings. And if you're using a parametric clothing asset, the idea is that the clothing will morph to the body, which is really cool. You can kind of build your assets and then apply them to a bunch of different characters. Now
and these bodies are just I mean, what you're saying is all right. And these bodies, just like the faces, are based on lots of examples and learning from actual bodies. So again, you're moving within a parametric space, which is correct. Everything is plausible that you do in this space.
Exactly. And that's going to be especially apparent when we get to the face part of this. If we hit the head, you get the same thing and some more options. You get the same thing where we get the blend. And so if I just take the first 3 characters in here, we'll take Ada, and let's do, here we go. The 3 fairly different facial silhouettes. Same thing. You can take all the different pieces of the face, start with the nose, and again, moving around is going to help to actually see what this looks like in context of your character. Whatever you want to do, you can use the blend to get a great kind of first pass at everything. You'll notice this really will shape the look of the character, and the eyes, the nose, the lips, like all these really defining features coming from all these like realistic people. It makes it really easy to dial in a look because you have so many examples to pull from. But if you want to get crazy with it, as we all do, you can move down these different um, menus. If I go to the transform section, you can see I get some big, broad, moving objects, these big markers. And this will let me just kind of move stuff. So if I take the kind of brow bone and just pull it forward, I can create a much sort of stronger brow. And I can take that way out if I wanted to. You can push this way beyond really what you should. And you will still be able to map animation to it, though, of course, if you really push it, whatever animation you've captured is going to be hard to map to this face because, fortunately, like you can see why it would be a little bit odd. But there's no reason not to have some fun with it. So if you want to create maybe Bob is he's a bit uppity. He wants to, I don't know, he thinks he's really above the people here. But unfortunately for him, he's a weak-chinned man. And I don't know, you just kind of play with it. It does help to sort of like decide who is this character and then start going from there. Or doing little voices as you go. Anyways, you can see this transformation mode will give you these kind of broad adjustments that you can make on a symmetrical level. You can also turn off symmetrical manipulation, something that I see a lot of people not realize you can do over here on the left. If you turn off symmetrical manipulation, we can adjust this. And you can really do whatever you want. So if you want to make some custom characters, like you can really do that. Once
And
you have
little pro tip with that is working primarily with symmetry on is great for foundational work, but if you really want to sell a character, adding some very subtle asymmetry at the end can really help kind of pull them out of that uncanny valley. You can very easily go overboard with it in some cases, and it starts to become really noticeable, but most humans' faces, like if you ever want to try this yourself, it's eye-opening. Take a picture of yourself, put it in Photoshop, and then just mirror it from the vertical, and you'll notice how asymmetrical you actually are. And those little details are huge for kind of breathing life into your characters.
100%. And then once you've mirrored your face, you'll never unsee the little asymmetrical differences again.
It is true.
Once you've gotten this kind of broad level of transformation data, and by the way, I agree, I wouldn't mess with asymmetrical stuff just yet. Because here, if I go to, not conform. Conform is for when you're trying to match stuff from other DCCs and the DNA files of other characters that have been created, different things like this. There's a lot of power in that. But the sculpt menu is really cool. The sculpt menu gives you a lot of little visual tweakers. And this is where you can really get in there and shape individual parts of each feature. So before, you might be like, oh, where do I want the eyes and how far apart do I want them to be? But then you can decide, okay, well, what's the shape of the eyelids? Let me go ahead and get in here a little bit closer. There we go. And you can see here I can just move them independently. And again, you can turn off asymmetrical. First pass, I wouldn't recommend it. But at a certain point, you may want to. And at any point, you have sort of this menu over here on the right, which I'm mostly ignoring. But you have this area where you can preview other things. There's later on in the process, you can preview this character with animation, with clothing, with hair assets, which we'll build in the hair and cloth. But you'll be able to see all of this working in motion before you commit it, send it into the project, and then realize like, oh no, I did something with the eyes, and now like looks weird with the data we've captured. You can do a lot of the previewing here in this area.
Yeah, that's right. This is a really good point because something we wanted with MetaHuman was the second you create that character. So you started with a new MetaHuman. That's a character that is a fully rigged, ready to go character. So you could drop that into a level. You could assemble that and drop it into a level and start playing it. So we wanted to build that kind of interaction at every point. We don't want to delay you getting full eyes on exactly what that character would be like in a game or whatever your experience in your scene is. So it's a really good point that it's always trying to be a fully ready to go character.
Yes, which is super helpful when you have a bunch of characters to make that you can just kind of trust that once you make them, they're ready to go. So here's this guy. Here's our Bob. And as far as the larger facial features, I'm fairly happy with this. I won't worry about asymmetry in this. You can also go as far as like teeth and eyelashes. And this is another thing that I think gets overlooked a lot with first time creating metahumans, is that you can mess with things like the tooth length. You can adjust like the length of the teeth. So if you want to give them kind of smaller teeth, you can create some variation. You look here, you can actually see like we can move the teeth around. And I don't personally feel it's necessary to like, oh, but I want to move each tooth. I certainly don't want to do that. There are tons of different variation steps along this way. You can even see like, what does it look like with it open? And this will give a lot of personality to this character. Because teeth, well, it's not something you really think about. It is something just subconsciously. We spend a lot of time looking at people in the world and looking at like mouths moving. Well, not everyone can read lips. We're all familiar with certain mouth shapes. In a movie, if you've ever seen a character that's like, get down or good job, you have a sense of like what they're saying, even if you can't perfectly lip read. And that sort of just speaks to how much we are used to seeing mouths and talking. And so it's not a super like big part of this process, but adjusting even just like the teeth profile in individual characters will go a long way to making them feel unique and not feeling cookie cutter. Because you've got these little details that feel unique per character. I really recommend playing with some of these deeper settings, including eyelashes.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that like it's such a small detail that you might look at your characters like if you have like a bunch in a game, you look at them, you all talk or whatever, and you might notice some uncanniness with them, but you're not exactly sure why. And something as simple as like they all have the exact same teeth can kind of subconsciously register in your brain, even though you don't fully know exactly what it was that was kind of making you feel that way.
Exactly. Here we've got some eyelashes. We can just kind of pop those on. Very nice. Very pretty eyelashes. If I continue here, once we hit materials, boom, we're in texture world. Now, what you're going to get with a metahuman is a unique texture for the head and then a different texture for the body. Because as we'll see in a moment, the way that metahumans are constructed are these compound assets of sort of modular pieces. And so if you notice that like, oh, interesting, his skin has like a bit of a line at the clavicle, that's intentional. That gives us sort of a lot of detail we can do in the face, where the assumption is like we'd probably put some clothes on these characters. You can mess with the body textures too, but they're going to be a little bit separate, which is just good to know. So don't worry too much about like I want a scar along the arm. Like that's later. That's like something else, a different process. Here we want to focus on the overall character. And so what we can do is we can pick our skin tones, and you can see we've got this nice sort of UV. I think for hair, it's like melanin and redness. Like these map to certain real world aspects to the way that like, skin tones and hair and these different shaders are working for characters specifically. If we go ahead and say, all right, make sure Bob's got a little bit of color, go like that. Another thing we can do here is we can start to say, you know what, Bob is looking a little young. Let's give him some of that wisdom and experience. We can use the face texture index, and if I just type a 1, you can see immediately he's a little bit more weathered. And I can just slide this, and we can see all kinds of different data sets that have been collected. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think these come from scans of all the different people who have been used for
we've done we have a lot of scanning. We're perpetually doing scanning work, incredibly high resolution as well. We're incredibly detailed. We take a lot of efforts to make sure we've got a good demographic and ethnicities in our scan. So, and it's all based on that data. That's what fundamentally drives MetaHuman.
And as I said before, we have the face and we have the body. Now the body feels a little bit smooth considering the face that we've put on here, but that's why we have a body texture index. And that's why I wanted to call that out before, is you do have the ability to sort of mix and match. Now, let's see if I go, whoops, try to mess with this. We have a lot more variety in the face because it makes, I would think it makes a lot more sense to scan a bunch of people's face than to be like, all right, everyone, close off, time to scan you. Like we don't necessarily need that much data there. If you need something really specific, then you can create something really specific. But this will just give us a little bit more to the way our shoulders and kind of the parts of the body of our character are going to look. And what we can do as well is tweak little settings like roughness. If I turn down the roughness, you'll see that the character is a little bit shinier. Maybe the character is more oily naturally. Maybe it's a matter of they're in a very humid climate. And so you can start thinking of your storytelling even at this stage, because here we're getting a lot more sort of reflected light, versus if I crank up the roughness all the way, we get less of a specular highlight, less of a defined specular highlight anyway. And by the way, if you're at this point and you're like, I wish I could see it in different lighting conditions, you totally can. That's kind of the whole thing with this window, right? If you want to test this and make sure your character is going to work, up at the top, you can go to the studio drop down here. We've got different modes for, you can see the topology. You need to go back to it. You can go to skin. If you want to see the mesh, you can see clay. You can see kind of what that face texture index is doing to the normals and the surface detail of our character. But if we go to studio mode, we can switch the lighting and we can start adjusting this for something a little bit more dramatic, or rotate this if you like it, but you just need to see it a little bit darker, a little bit of that highlight in the eyes. Or if you're like, no, I need like campfire. All right, let's see the campfire, and so on. Something like moonlit, nighttime. That's campfire. And so this gives you a much more flexible way. I mean, this gives you a really flexible way to just kind of look at your characters and start building them. And you can even start checking, what's this character going to look like from really, really far away? As I'll show you later, we have LODs. Oh yeah, we have to generate some of that stuff, which I'll get to later on. But you can change the quality settings. You can change LODs once you've generated them. You've got some different cameras you can jump into. There's a few different things here that are really, really handy. I'm going to go back to, actually,
Just to say, because we've got some more features coming there, so you'll be able to load your own lighting, your own scene into that view, so you can actually see the MetaHuman in that scene. So, really expanding what people are able to do, because sometimes people find that the MetaHuman looks a certain way, looks great in that lighting view, and then they take it into their scene and it doesn't feel the same. And when you're trying to work out if it's a problem with the MetaHuman or a problem with the scene, we thought, okay, let's add it so you can bring your own lighting conditions, your own scene into this view, which hopefully helps people then determine where the issues are.
That's awesome. The thing is with this menu is we could spend another hour and a half just going through everything in here. There's so much to play with. I'll start rapid firing through a few more things. Is the fact that we have these different areas of the face that we can say, oh, maybe I want to give him a bit of a sunburn. Maybe we'll kind of add some redness to his nose. Maybe I'll add some saturation there. I'll do the same thing on his forehead for the same reason. Usually when you get sunburned, you get kind of the T-zone, right? A little bit of sun there, and maybe a bit more on his cheeks. Bob likes to be outside during the day. And so you can even dial in what level of texture resolution you need. So if we're going to get right up close on this guy, we can switch it all the way up to 8K textures, which is totally fine. We can just set that up. We can do it selectively for different parts of the face or the body. I'm not going to worry about any of that right now. And ultimately, whether it's the skin, whether it's the eyes, which are really easy to just swap in, give them these like hazel, maybe these are kind of pretty. Give them those. You can also adjust individualize, I should mention too. And there's all kinds of different settings for tweaking that. I'll just use the presets. We've got makeup. Want to give him a little bit of eyeshadow. He's looking fab. We can do blush. We can do lipstick. You can do all that kind of stuff. We've got teeth. So if you want to adjust the actual colors and materials, how much black he has on his teeth. So if you want to yellow his teeth a bit, things like that. Keep it moving. Hair and cloth. Once we get through materials, you probably want to give him a groom. We can create grooms in, we can create grooms, we can bring them in here, or we can just use what the presets are. That's typically what most people do, and that's what I'm going to stick to for now. But if I give him, let's give him this little short pull back maybe. Just double click and it will apply the groom. And what's nice about this is there's a bunch of under the hood stuff that has to go into attaching hair to a character. Some groom binding stuff, which all just gets handled once we assemble our character. So that's not something you have to worry about, how to like link these data assets. That's all handled by this process, which is very nice. Please ignore my autosave. And he probably needs some eyebrows, actually. Give him some eyebrows. It's easy to miss the eyelashes earlier. And if that's the case, they're down here for you as well because they're still part of the groom. You can select them here if you hadn't already. And we can even give him some facial hair, which I'll give him, this gunslinger mustache. And then the other thing you can do is once you've applied all these different groom assets, there we go. Look at Bob.
Coming together.
He's really feeling fleshed out. I feel like I know him. If we go to the details of hair and clothing, you're like, wait, where are the colors? Where do I change the hair materials? It's not under materials because it's more of an attribute on the hair material that already exists. So under hair and color, you go to details, and then that's where you can read that we've got the eyebrows, we've got the eyelashes, we've got the short pulled back hair, and that's where we have our melanin and redness sliders. So if you want to give them, some bleached blonde hair, you could do that, or just leave it as it was. This is a big one where you're going to want to probably play with some of the lighting conditions because the way that the hair is going to look, there we go, go like this. Look at the way that the light will play off. This is my recommendation, is to kind of move the lighting around. That way you can actually see when it's time to adjust the hair, you can see how the light will catch it and how some of these deeper settings, like the redness in the hair, that's going to come through as the light kind of shines through it. So this is a really nice point to start messing with your lighting because you'll get a lot more information out of your hair if you do that. From there, I'm feeling pretty good about that. Now we can go to assembly. Now, this system will kind of let you know, like, hey, you've missed a step, if that's the case. It's going to ask you some questions, and I've skipped a couple buttons on purpose here. But if you go to assembly, you'll see that there's some different modes. There's the cinematic mode, which is everything, all the quality, all the settings. And then there's an optimized version. And then there's a version for UEFN, which keeps it a really small file size for this MetaHuman so that it actually can fit into the size needed for a Fortnite island, because everything has to fit in a very specific size maximum, which I forget off the top of my head. I actually do have a question for the team. If anyone wants to give a little bit more information than I can give on the difference between the cinematic mode and the optimized mode.
In terms of what, I mean, essentially it's massively compressed the textures. So they're almost identical in terms of the MetaHuman, largely the MetaHuman in terms of skeleton and rigs, etc. It's mainly work on the textures. And in fact, another sneak peek, we've got some more of that coming at 5.8, some pretty phenomenal, another order of magnitude improvement in some of that, even for the cinematics. So we're getting there. I mean, we've heard people saying there's challenges with using metahumans, sometimes because of the sheer scale of them, and so we've been listening to a lot of that and spent a lot of time behind the scenes. So we have some more stuff coming. There's fewer LODs as well in the UFN metahumans, optimized metahumans. They're not just for UFN. They're optimized. They were done so for that purpose. But if they're useful to you, then go for it.
Exciting. Once we get to this point in the process, we're just about done. This will give you a little warning saying, hey, the character's not rigged yet. And what's nice is we don't have to do that ourselves. We can just click this button that'll say create a full rig using the DNA, or we can create a joint only rig. And this is not going to take a particularly long amount of time. We also can download the specific textures we need to do this. Right now we're kind of in preview mode. Now I could click these and it'll I guess I'll do it while I talk. But you can download your textures and then create your rig. And then once you've done that, it'll then say, hey, your character's locked. you're ready to go. And you can click the assemble button. It'll ask you what you want to name the asset, the actual blueprint that's going to get created. And in fact, I'll go ahead and let's do it. And here's a fun little quirk. If you experience this in various menus over here on the left, sometimes it'll happen on my computer where I'll be in a menu, I'll have some stuff, I'll click one of these top buttons, and then the stuff goes away. I'm like, where are the buttons? Where's the little drop down? Where's my assemble button? Just leave and come back. That gets it. Sometimes, whatever other messages are popping up will take priority. And so that's a quick way to just make sure all is well. And so now you can see the asset is now rig pending because it's actively rigging the character using all those facial groups and applying sort of all the built-in technology here onto your custom character. We have a little status bar in the bottom right corner. And what's really great about this whole process is we have been working not on like a blueprint asset. We have been working on a MetaHuman sort of creator asset. This sort of, let's call it a package, this little package of data, this information that says, all right, like here is the character I want. I've spent all this time, I've sculpted him, I've done materials, blah, blah, blah. This is my character and I want to be able to do stuff with it. You can share the full character once it's all finished and made in just a moment, or you can just share sort of this packet of data, DNA file essentially. And that's something I skipped over at the beginning was these conform buttons at the top. It allows you to bring in DNA files, and you can do more like direct ways of saying like, I want to import information about how to construct a MetaHuman from these other files. I'm not doing any of that right now, but this sort of like building a MetaHuman is shareable. And there's various ways to kind of go about that. But once we've got this ready to go, character's rigged over here in the top right corner, this is where we can actually preview this. We have this preview over here on the right that says, all right, animation sequences. We've got body, we've got face, we've got, you can just hit play and you'll see the idle. We can switch this to the face ROM, and that's going to give you a much more dynamic set of facial poses to test and make sure that we haven't pulled the brow too far, that we haven't pulled the nose too long. Different things like the facial mapping data can now sort of test and see, how's this going to look? Have you gone off the rails? And you can make adjustments. If you miss this step, you can always come back and generate another character. Like it's not hard to reassemble another character, but it's always nice to just kind of get it all done in one go. We also have body animations, which I'm not going to worry about. You get the point. You can also change the speed. So if you're like, oh, wait, there was something here just a moment ago, you can go into slow motion and you can see it really close. So if you're like, I need to stare at these poses, I really need to like understand what's happening, you can drop down the play rate and you'll get a little bit more time to look at things like blinks and things like that to make sure that the eyelids come down nicely, which they are doing just fine. All looking really good. You can also even push in live link data, which is pretty crazy. And
yeah, that's a fun thing. I wondered if you were going to mention that. It's crazy. I mean, it just reinforces what I said is this is a game ready character now. This is, you could use this and you can with driving it. And it's quite fun to, tweak the character, start performing again in front of the camera, tweak the character. It gets a bit addictive, that I'm afraid.
Yes, very. I'm gonna show you this stuff a little bit more in depth as we go. Right now, this is just pulling a face from one of these applications that I have open. That's not you can see there's no face visible here at the moment. It's pulling facial data from a system open on my computer, which is why he's got this pose. It's not currently pulling in my facial data, but what I can do, I'll be very quick about this, just to show you guys something fun here, is I'm going to set this up. Oh, actually, no, I don't want to do that. I'll come back to this. I'll come back to this when it makes more sense. Because right now it's also using body data, so he's going to like walk away. As soon as I hit that, he like went to another location because I have a mocap suit over here, not standing at origin. So we'll save that. But you have the ability to live pilot the character right in this moment, which we'll save that. When you're done though, you just hit assemble. and it's going to say, hey, it's, in my case, I have some migrated assets that it's just, hey, we're going to update some stuff. Now I'm going to go ahead and cancel. I am going to cooking show this. This doesn't take a particularly long amount of time, but I don't really want to take any extra time. So I'm just going to save Bob here. He's ready to be brought out into the world. But rather than deal with that, I'm going to go ahead and we're just going to say, go ahead and close this. We're just going to come over here and we're going to bring in a different character. You can see here, these are our MetaHuman character sort of building assets. And then once you assemble the character, it will give you these. It'll give you this whole folder for your character with a blueprint. And that blueprint is your MetaHuman.
Real quick interruption before we move too far forward. Once somebody assembles that character and essentially bakes them out, is it possible then to go back into the creator with that character and make some refinements if they found that later, oh, actually we wanted to change XYZ features or any sort of thing like that?
Totally. Personally, I'm a bit of a data hoarder. So I'm someone who likes to go back in, I'll reopen. So like Vivian here has already been created. But if I wanted to go back in and give Vivian a new hairstyle, I could go back into her asset, make some adjustments. And personally, I like to just generate like a version 2 or a underscore hair, or like, I don't typically tweak what I've got. I just make new ones and then just keep building other things. But yes.
Yeah, assembly is kind of non-destructive. It doesn't lose anything. It provides you with the assets you need to use it. It's kind of in a design mode. Like it's the way it's saying, it's kind of making it in a design mode, and then you add in here's the runtime stuff you need, but any changes you want to make, you can continue to make. And as Wade said, before you've got the ability to bring in external DNAs, so you can round trip. We've got tools in Maya that allow you to do very detailed changes to the expressions and the rigs, and so you can take the DNA out. You can do those things and then round trip, bring it back in to create and carry on. Those changes are instantaneous, and you can just carry on. So, yeah,
great.
Yes. On an unrelated note, just something I'm going to show everybody. Autosave, typically very handy, but during a live demo, very annoying. Every time it wants to be like autosaving unsaved packages. I don't need that when we're doing a live demo. So I'm going to turn off autosave, because you can do that. You can also adjust how frequently. So if you are someone who's like, I crash all the time, I'm always installing new plugins, maybe you want to, up the frequency or adjust it in some way, just so that you can. I'm turning off autosave so I stop getting interrupted by it. But
turn off autosave when you are doing a live demo with things you don't care about keeping. Keep it on basically every other time.
Yes, 100%. And if I may be so bold to suggest it, revision control. It is your friend. If you've never used revision control, it's off topic, but it's a really handy way to basically have your work backing up to essentially, I want to say like a cloud service, because it's not like it's going to Google Drive or something, but you're basically having your data securely saved somewhere. You can check in, check out. If you're working with a team, you can sort of make sure you're managing permissions. The best thing about it for small teams and solo creators is that it does give you a really nice way to back up your data or to restore older versions. If you did something like, oh no, I saved over my MetaHuman, I did something weird and deleted a bunch of stuff and it's just gone, and I don't use Dropbox or Google Drive or something like that, all of your sort of history of the file will be saved in revision control. And if you'd like a suggestion, since we are looking for sort of indie forward stuff, I can suggest to you, my personal choice is Diversion, which is free. Diversion, Unreal Engine. I'm going to show you really quick where that lives. Diversion. And you can get it on Fab. There's a plugin that you can just kind of pop in. If that wants to load, oh, there it is. Diversion version control. It's free. It's great. It's really easy to get a handle on how it works, and it makes life a lot better. It's also kind of built into like revision control in general is kind of built into Unreal. Like if you crash, it'll try to save what it can into the revision control system, and then when you reload a project, it'll like try to boot back up from that. And if you don't have one connected, sometimes you just get an error saying, "We were going to try to load some data, but you don't seem to have reversion control, so good luck."
Yeah,
You
I think that's a good point. The thing about version control I was thinking in this space is it gives you the strength to be bold. You feel they've got confidence now that okay, I can try something because I can always step back. And there's kind of the safe mistake is what creativity is built on. So I agree, it's a great idea to have it.
Yeah, and if you don't use revision control, but you do the option that Sir just mentioned before, which is just, save a V2 or V3 or just an alternate version, then you can do that same sort of thing. Be bold with that new version, but still have the other one as a backup.
If I had £1 for every time I had a MetaHuman with underscore definitely final, I'd have a lot of pounds.
Yes.
Same. Here is hopefully this is helpful for those who haven't really dug deep into MetaHumans yet. But I wanted to, now that we've created one, I wanted to give you a quick tour of like the most common things you'll need to like find within them, how they work. Actually, and before I even go there, anytime you're like, all right, I have a MetaHuman, I want to go ahead and pop them in the scene. You don't have to do this, but this is just my experience. I find that my computer is happiest if instead of just trying to drag it in, obviously that worked and that worked great. And typically that's like how you add a character. But the first time I open Unreal, say I close my Unreal project and I reopen it, Unreal will load everything it needs to load. But unless I've got a MetaHuman already in here, it maybe hasn't seen one today. And so what I like to do is I like to double click on the blueprint to just kind of load it independently. Like, oh yeah, there's my character. Once I've done that, whoop, dropping it in is really easy. Not that you can't do that, but I found that if I, click and drag to drop in a MetaHuman, Unreal has to do two things. It has to go, oh, let me like figure out the shaders, understand what I'm looking at, and then it's got to drop it in the scene. And it just hitches the engine a little bit. It doesn't cause any problems. It never crashes or anything like that. But it's just one of those things where like I drag and I feel Unreal go, huh, and then it does it. It's fine, but I prefer knowing that like that doesn't happen whenever possible. So I like to double click it and then drag it in, because then it's just like, yep, no problem, easy. So, oh, someone else in chat says you can load asset, right click, load asset without opening. I've never done that, but that also sounds useful. Cool. So
Real quick, sir, if I can, I know your whole system that you have going on here for screen sharing is multi-layered and kind of there's a lot going on. Would it be possible to open the engine preferences and just increase your scaling just a little bit for text?
of course. Yes, good call for anybody who needs to see things better.
And if anybody has this issue, if you're on like a 4K screen, but you don't want to increase your overall everything scaling, you just want to do it in the editor, there is a setting in the preference that you can change right there called scale. And that'll increase it
very handy.
Thank you so much.
How's this?
Great. I can't read any of it.
Perfect. If I need to make it any bigger, let me know.
No, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
Cool. So if I just do this, now that we've got a MetaHuman in here, I want to take a look at it. It's got a bunch of folders, body, face, things like that. But I'm going to go into the blueprint to take a quick look at our asset. And if I make it bigger, we don't need to worry too much about the graphs and the nodes. If anybody in here is like, nah, I'm allergic to these things. All you need to know is that built into every MetaHuman is a live link setup. It's designed to be used with all kinds of different systems for animation. And live link for motion capture is just natively there. Already here. You can tweak it if you want to, but that's there for you, which is great. We can go to the viewport. We can see our character. And to give you a quick rundown, over here on the left, we have our components. The components are the different pieces that make up any blueprint. Blueprints can be characters. Blueprints can be, lights that spin and do all kinds of fun stuff. Blueprints can be just logic for the game. It can be any number of things. But for characters specifically, for MetaHumans, a character blueprint when you select one of these components, you'll see the options for whatever you select over here on the right, which makes it a lot easier to sort of navigate once you know that. If I select the character blueprint itself, sort of the root level of the character, we've got things like the live link data, which is what this these different, actually the event graph, this that I just mentioned, that's kind of feeding into these settings here, which we'll come back to later on. But the way that they're constructed is we've got the body, which is kind of its own thing. Actually, they're talking to each other, so I can't separate them at the moment. If I go like this, I can show you that the metahuman body that we have in this case is just arms and legs, which you might think is odd, but it's because it's well optimized so that the clothing assets themselves are kind of their own thing. Because the character, if you remember, had sort of like a tank top underwear situation when we built them, and this clothing asset was optional. This was something that, in the same way that I double click hair, double click eyebrows, you can double click clothing outfit assets when you've got them in there. And this is the default that comes with the system. So you can just add t-shirt and shorts to any character. And so that is its own asset. It's its own skeletal mesh. Just like the body is its own skeletal mesh, just like the head or the face is its own skeletal mesh. So if I go in here, I can show you this. And this is what we spent so long tweaking, is our character's sort of bust, head section, right? And what's great about this is that each of these assets, whether it's the clothing, whether it's the head, they all share a skeleton. If I go to the skeleton mode, you can see that they all share not only a skeleton, but they all have sort of this inherent understanding of how metahumans are meant to work under the hood. They all share the same system of bones and joints and understanding like where the data needs to be. And from that, what I can do, let's see, where does it live? Bones, all. You can see there's a whole bunch of bones in here. By using that system, we didn't have to make this ourselves. Thank goodness. We have these fine folks to thank for doing it for us. Because I don't want to do that. Not my thing. Thank goodness it's somebody else's. So leave all that under the hood. There's a lot of detail in here. But anyway, these parts of the body all share a skeleton, which means they can all talk to each other. And even things like the groom, the hair, eyebrows, mustache, if you got it, all these different groom assets, they come with their own, bindings and assets, and all this kind of stuff is all connected in the blueprint. All that to say, when it's time to use your character, that's why you bring in the character blueprint. In case you're like, why am I using a blueprint? What's the deal? Like, I made a MetaHuman. Why is it a blueprint that I'm dragging into my scene? Because the blueprint is the thing that does all the assembly of all these different pieces and connects everything. And that was all generated during the assembly phase for us. If you want to, you can change materials and things like that for body parts. So if you were like, I need to change the skin of Vivian here, I could go to the face. I could come over here to the right. I can go into the skeletal mesh if I want to, or I could see the individual shaders and materials being used for this character. And if I had multiple characters, I could go to a different metahuman. I could say, I've got Gerald, who you have not met yet. Or actually, I guess you saw him at the beginning. And his face and his materials, he's got different textures. So he's got a left eye that I could say, let's give her one of those brown eyes. And then let's take his right eye and let's push it onto her right eye. And you can mix and match these things. Not that you need to. This was all built for us. That's why we use the creator, so that you didn't have to do this manually. But, it's just good to know that these characters are, cross-compatible with each other. They're all sort of the same base assets, which makes it really, really handy as we start to work with them. So,
especially in an instance where you have a ton of characters and you don't necessarily want different texture outputs for every single person's eyes or anything like that, especially if they're just kind of background characters or non primary characters in a game, just for performance reasons or storage reasons.
100%. The last thing I want to show you when it comes to working with the blueprint itself, let me go ahead and just drag her back into the sun. We can see her a little bit better. When we have a metahuman, by default, when you drag them into the scene, they are sort of intelligently using the LOD system, or level of detail. And what that means is, if I select my blueprint here in the scene, and I go to my details view, you can actually see that we have all the different components from our blueprint editor right here. That's just a good thing to know. So as I was digging through and I was like, oh, look, we have our character blueprint and we have all these different pieces inside and da 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 da. When you select your character blueprint here in the scene, you go to your details view, that's exactly what it's giving you. So that'll make this a little bit easier to navigate if you haven't realized that before, or if no one showed you that, is we have all of our different pieces. So we have our live link stuff right there, like I showed. We've got the body, we've got the face, all the different texture information is in here. But if you scroll to the bottom, inside of the character blueprint is something called LOD sync, which is the actual level of detail, sort of intelligent quality slider, let's call it. What we can do is as we get further and further away from a character, Unreal automatically starts to go, the character's really far away. We can't actually see all the geometry of the face. Why should we load all that detail? You're not going to need it. You can't see it. And so as you get further and further away, Unreal will sort of snap things. And so you can see here, if you look closely at her hair, see how her hair is sort of snapping from one quality setting to another? It's because I'm getting within a certain like distance threshold. And when you're working with MetaHuman, sometimes that's fine. Sometimes that's actually really great. And other times you're like, no, there's a reason that I don't want that to happen. And you can override that. If I click on LOD sync for any given character, you can see there are 8 total LODs, starting at 0, going up to 7. That's a computer, and computers like to start things at 0. And right now it's set to forced LOD -1, meaning, we're not forcing anything. But if I say force it to 0, that is top quality, always show me all the hair, all the eyebrows, render every eyelash, and so on, no matter how far away I get. This can be a really, really handy little toggle if your computer has no issues with like full resolution metahumans, which again, this comes back to if you're using unoptimized like cinematic mode with 8K textures, be cognizant of what computer you're on. Because if you're on like an 8-year-old laptop, you probably want to use compressed textures and maybe 2K maps or whatever you might be doing, or swap things in and out. But let's say you're happy with it. I want the full quality all the time. Sometimes when you are doing cinematic work, or if your camera gets too far from your character, things like the hair simulation, you'll notice that they'll buzz, they'll bounce, they'll catch, and then they'll do something weird. You'll be like, why is the hair suddenly like jumping around? I'm not doing anything but moving the camera. It's because the camera's moving in and out of that sort of distance threshold that is affecting an LOD. Because hair will render and do simulation at the higher LODs, at the higher quality LODs. But as you get further away, to save on resources, we don't need to simulate hair. So if you find that in your projects, you're having like weird bounces of the hair or the clothing that's supposed to just not do that, probably just the LODs from the distance that your camera's at. So that's one of the main reasons that I would use the force LOD is to pick a level of detail that you want to stick to.
And if I'm not mistaken, too, you can also just adjust the screen space threshold, right, for when that LOD transitions to. So if it's still something where, like, performance reasons, you're like, I really don't need to render this thing at LOD 0 when it's 500 feet away, but you're still in that range where you can see that transition and you want to kind of buffer that, you can change that screen size threshold so that way it transitions a little bit later, too. Just a few different options for handling that.
That's such a good point. I'm glad you said that.
When you're working with stuff, I'll usually do this, but maybe for shipping, especially if it's a game, then play with those thresholds.
100%. But that's sort of the foundational understanding of like what metahumans are, how they work. And then from there, I guess it's probably really important to point out that the way that a metahuman is built is it's built to be completely fully compatible with all the Unreal Engine like mannequin animation features, skeleton features, like all the stuff that you can do normally with mannequin characters. It's super compatible with metahumans. And so just to show you this, before I get into motion capture, is let's just go into a level sequence, just a super, super basic. I'll just make them from scratch. I'll right click, I'll create a level sequence, and I'll just call this ls underscore Vivian. I spelled her name wrong. There we go. So if I open a level sequence, which is my timeline view, basically, right? I can tell Unreal, hey, I've got this character and I want to do some animation or I want to do something involving a timeline. It's not live. It's something I want to kind of control. Automatically, you're given a couple of things. When you drop a character asset that Unreal understands into your sequencer, it'll automatically say, hey, you've got a body, you've got a face. Those are two different skeletal mesh assets that are being combined by the blueprint, right? But they're both in here, and they both have rigs associated with them. So it automatically says, hey, you wanna go ahead and play with the posing? Great. Super fast, super easy. This is all gonna run on your GPU, the deformations anyway. And so despite these being really advanced characters, all of the manipulations are going to be really lightweight. Right? So you've got a body rig, which is the same rig essentially as is on the mannequin characters. You've got a face rig, or this face board, which has a lot of stuff going on. I have some tips for you on that. But this system works just the same as any other asset in Unreal. So if you're like, I want to add animation to my character, you could go to the body and you could add an animation track. And if you had any animation in here, you could attach it. I don't have any just yet, but we're about to do that. And there is, well, let's see, what would be the best way to show you this? Actually, I'll do this. If I show you this, I'll go and find one of my mannequin characters. Let's find Quinn. Here's Quinn. Oh, so here's that hitch I was talking about. I didn't double click Quinn. Usually not a huge problem. You can see that Unreal's just taking a moment to go, all right, load the character. But that little delay that it had is why I like to double click an asset just to have it loaded up. You only have to do that once per session if you choose to do it at all. So if I take Quinn and I drop her in the sequencer, same thing happens. And you'll notice immediately, once she gets her rig, it'll pop her to the sequencer. She gets a rig. It's the same rig. And we're pretty much good to go. And what's cool about this is if I say, let's see, if I take Quinn here, I'll show you guys a fun little animation trick that not a lot of people realize is in here. If you take any control rig in Unreal and you grab one of the controls, so take a control rig, set a key on everything, just one key across your entire control rig, just like that. Then select a control. And if you have auto key turned on, this little button here, this means that when I scrub a head and I turn the head, for example, whoop, it automatically sets a keyframe. And we'll keep that animation. Delete that. But what you can do is if you have your auto key turned on and you have your character in control rig mode, I can grab it. And if I hit play, which in my case, the hotkey is shift spacebar. That animation, I take my hands off the keyboard. It's all captured. We call that mouse mocap. That's what I call it anyway. Mouse mocap's really great. It's a really quick way to just, whatever you do with your mouse, it just locks it to keyframes. And what's so cool about this is that, yeah, I did this with a mannequin, but that's the thing. This control rig, I can copy the entire control rig with all the animation on it. I can take Vivian over here and I could say, you know what? I don't need her body control rig at all. I could just delete the rig. In fact, let's say that for some reason I had put her in another pose. I've been like, all right, I've broken her legs. She doesn't enjoy this. Let's just delete the rig. Boop, gone. No rig. Character's unrigged.
That's a terrible thing to do to Vivian.
Oh,
I apologize. I'm so sorry, Vivian.
we got some love for mouse mocap in the chat, by the way.
Yeah. It's great. And that's something that a lot of DCCs that are animation focused can't do. Some can, most can't. Unreal, they can, which we love. So what I'll do is I'll take Quinn's control rig here, which again has all that fun mouse mocap data. I'll just copy this, go to the body of Vivian. I like to go to the first frame to make sure I paste it in the right spot. And I just pasted not only the rig, but all the animation from the mannequin to Quinn, the MetaHuman. Super easy, super quick, because these characters are super compatible. The assets work for both because it's the same underlying skeleton, which suddenly we realize like, whoa, MetaHumans, which are so easy to make and have a lot of features and detail and various things we can do with them, suddenly everything you've ever done with a mannequin is now really easily applicable to these advanced characters. That's what's so cool about this, is that they are exactly like any other asset that we have in the toolbox. And so with that,
Probably worth saying that actually a lot of the MetaHuman technology is underpins a lot of the characters now in Unreal. So even though there's MetaHumans, a lot of the same technology, the rigs, skeletons, etc., are being adopted, maybe in cut down forms across Unreal and further as well.
that's a better way to say that. So now let's start to dig into some fun stuff. I mean, not that this hasn't been fun, but let's get into some advanced things.
Finally, the fun stuff. Oh, this is all been great.
Woo, I hope so. The one thing I want to show right off the bat is if we're thinking about this idea of great, like there's animation data maybe in your scene, and we want to put this on a MetaHuman. Just like the quickest, easiest, like lowest lift way to do it is like, let's say we have an asset pack from Fab, some free animation data. Where is one that I've got? Anim Starter Pack. I think this one was free at some point. And in fact, it's even like it's old enough that it's the older mannequin. Now, I'll show you two things. Let's find, actually, you know what? Let's use, well, yeah, that's fine. Let me find a good one. Here's like a sprint. Sure. If I double click this, we've got a sprint forward with rifle, right? It's an older animation from the Unreal 4 days, the older mannequin, but it should still work because mannequins do still work fairly seamlessly. It's not one-to-one because there have been some updates in the skeleton, but we can do some cool stuff here. What I can do is just delete the rig off the character. Boop, gone. And Quinn, I'm going to make her spawnable, and I'm just going to hide her. Boop. So it seems like she's not there anymore. Technically, I can just bring her back at any point. Spawnable assets, when you hide them, they unload. So it makes it really easy to kind of just put them away. And what I'm going to do is I could take this animation, and technically I can just say, hey, Vivian, why don't you sprint forward with the rifle? And the thing is, I can try to go body, add animation, but it's not going to show it. It's not here. That animation sequence isn't here by default. And that's by design because it's not the same skeleton. Now, technically, we can sort of cheat this. This is not the recommended method, but I'm going to show it to you because sometimes you can get away with this, but I just want to show you both options. What I can do is I can go to Vivian and I can find her body skeleton, which is here. This is the thing that actually needs to do the running. And if I find this skeletal mesh, I can go in and I can tell Unreal, hey, this character that we've got, he's got a skeleton. The underlining skeleton is this MetaHuman base skeleton. Doesn't matter if we can't see the different joints, they are there. And I can prove that by going to View, Bones, all selected, or all hierarchy. So like the whole skeleton is in there. And technically, I can tell it in the skeletal view here under Window, I can drop this down to Asset Details. By the way, that's a different Asset Details than if you were in Skeletal Mesh Viewer. You have to be in the Skeletal Viewer specifically, and then you go to Window, Asset Details. And then you could say, hey, this character is compatible with other skeletons. And so technically, what is it? It's, let me see what this one is for. Where was that animation? Content, Anim Starter Pack. Let's see. So if I type in starter, it'll sort of search the whole path and find Anim Starter Pack UB4 mannequin mesh. I can say, hey, you're the same as the Unreal 4 mannequin. It's not. I want to just make sure that's clear. It's not the same skeleton. You're really not supposed to do it this way, but sometimes you can get away with it. So I wanted to show you that the option exists to you. If you're pretty sure, you can try it. So I can come in here and I can say, all right, this MetaHuman, and therefore now all MetaHumans in this project, should be compatible with animations using this Unreal Engine 4 skeleton. I can save that. And I can come out. And now if I say add animation, I now have all of these different animations. like the sprint forward rifle. And it does kind of work. And I can go ahead and loop this. Now with the caveat that, while this does work, it's functioning, there are some things that are going to get a little bit weird. For example, I think her arm might have some like weird bending and the wrist might be a little broken and the shoulders and the neck might end up in kind of a weird spot. The proper way to do this is to actually retarget the asset, which is also really, really easy as a version, I think 5.4 and on. It's like 3 clicks, which I'll do in just a moment. But I wanted to show you that this does exist. And so that's a thing you can look at. But let's do this properly. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and, for the sake of making this really clear, I'm going to go back to my character, back to body, to the asset. And I can say, oh, you know what? It's good, but it's not perfect. I want to do this the right way. Let me go back, go to my, I gotta go to the skeletal view, go back to window, asset details, and I can say, just kidding, you are no longer compatible. I should probably delete this just in case. I'm sure it'll handle it fine, but I don't want to save that and then it'd be like, wait a minute, and then crash. I don't think it would crash, but just in case. Anyway, now when I go back and I say animation, it does not see all those other animations. Now we do this properly. I say, all right, go grab that anim starter pack. Let's go ahead and find that sprint again. All I have to do is right click on an animation that's already in the project. Again, for the wrong skeleton, different character. And I just say retarget animations. You can see that it says, all right, here's the source. Here's where we're coming from. Where are we going to? And that target skeletal mesh is what I've been playing with this whole time. Vivian, body, this here. SKM MHC example body mesh. That is what I want. If I have that selected, it makes it really easy because I can just hit this little button and push what I have selected into that field. And again, it looks a little bit weird, but we know why. That's fine. What it will do, because it understands both of these skeletons, because this came from Fab, it's a mannequin, and this is a MetaHuman, it knows these skeletons. So if I double click on an animation, for example, my sprint, I can preview and say, oh yeah, it understands the hips, the shoulders, the arm, the leg, like it gets what the bone names are, so it knows how to retarget them. If I am happy with that, a little hard to tell at the moment, but if I'm happy with that, I'm like, yeah, I'm confident, all I have to do is export animations, and I can even shift click and get a bunch of them. And so if I go export a bunch of animations, actually, let me go ahead and make a folder for this first, just so I have somewhere to put this and keep it organized. Content, animations, animations. I like to make a retarget folder, RTG, for organization. And I'll say export animations, animations, RTG. I can give it a prefix of RTG underscore. I can give it a suffix of underscore MH to note that it's for a MetaHuman. You don't have to do that. I like to do that because I'll retarget stuff to different skeletons. Boop. Go. And done. Save all those assets. And I did skip a step just to make this really quick, but now you can see that I have a bunch of animations. When I go to body, I can just add animation, and now I should have, if I could type, a sprint. There it is. And now I have a sprint that's actually properly retargeted to the character. It's a little hard to tell, but her like lower midsection is a lot more like naturally posed now. It was kind of like bunched up before because it was compressing some spinal joints in a way that wasn't super flattering. And so this is now a properly retargeted asset, and it works really easily. You can take any asset from Fab or motion capture or whatever, and you can easily pop it into your character. I did skip one step just to show you where that lives. When you have two different meshes, I'll just grab two here to quickly show you where the button lives. If you're doing some kind of retarget and you notice like, oh, you know what? The shoulders are a little bit hunched or the neck's a little bit like bent funny. I want to tweak it. That's this little button that says auto generate retargeter. You can also tell it, hey, give me retarget assets, and it'll give you the actual assets that you could go in and tweak and make little pose adjustments. And then once you've made those pose adjustments, then you turn this off and you give it the asset you've tweaked. And then it'll retarget the animations with your little, neck and shoulder tweaks and apply that across all the animations that you're working with. Makes it really, really easy to kind of deal with this in bulk. But that's topic for another day because there's a lot we could talk about. Anyways, not only do we have some animation, but you can see, hopefully you can see, that her hair is also moving around. She's got simulation from the groom already working, right? If I move her and stop, you can see a little bounce. All that's just going. Now, it's important to keep in mind that here with this character, we've just done the body. The face is its own thing. The face is its own set of controls, which we could go ahead and animate ourselves if we wanted to, though I'm sure we don't. But we have that option. Let me now show you how we can do some really cool stuff with live capture. And I'll do this for body and for face, but for sure, let's start here. If you want to do some facial animation, if you're using the face board, you can just kind of use what's here. If you don't want to use if you want to use the face board technology, but you find it difficult to like navigate, physically get to that board or see it with the background, that's where some of these great community tools come into play. The Locodrome MetaHuman Animator tool is one of my personal favorites, as I showed earlier, which, by the way, works for both the body and the face. Now, I don't have a skeleton turned on this or a control rig on the character at the moment. I could add that in like 3 clicks, but you can do, for your metahumans, you can do both body controls. You can tweak things with this picker. So if you're like, oh, I want to grab the head and I want to spin it. Actually, I guess I'll just show you how to do that. If I take the body and say, oh, I want to just adjust the angle of her head, for example, I could take my body, I could add a control rig, layer it on top of the existing animation data, and I could just add the MetaHuman control rig. And just like that, I now have Vivian's rig. She's running around doing her thing, but I can still say, all right, give me that head control. Whoop. Look up higher. And now she's looking up. All she does is her run. Super quick adjustments, really, really easy. Maybe the neck is a little bit tweaked because of what I just did. So I'm going to take the neck and I'm going to push that up a little bit. Maybe I'll take the torso and just kind of loosen that a little. There we go. And I could animate this and add keyframes and all kinds of stuff, but let's just say that's fine. So that's one way. And then same thing with the face. I could come in here and we could try to mess with her expression. We could say, all right, let's, mess with her eye position. Maybe she's looking over this way. Maybe we'll kind of scrunch her mouth over there and we'll do whatever we're going to do, right? And so this is just a picker. It's just a way to quickly get access to the MetaHuman control board that already exists. Just handy. I like it. It's really great things for copying and mirroring poses, things that are also built into the engine by default. But it's just handy. I like it. But let's do something different. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just save the sequencer. I'm going to exit it. Boop. Exit all that animation. Go back to the character just standing here. Let's push some motion capture data in. Now, as you might know, you can just take motion capture data and like export it and do everything we just did. Like if you have a suit, you can do whatever you're going to do your capture, and then you can just export that data. If we're using Rococo, which is one of the more affordable suits that exist, you could take that data, you can export it as an FBX, make sure it's set for the UE5 skeleton, which is Manny, which is therefore MetaHumans, so it's already ready for it. And you could just then send it out. And then you'll do everything we just did. But if you want to do just live data, we have a couple of options. To briefly show you the body stuff, we'll start there. When you have any kind of motion capture data, whether it's Rococo, whether it's the little Mocapi markers, whether it's Move AI or even Rococo Video, like there's free stuff, there's low cost stuff, there's AI generated stuff, there's the suit, there's optical, there's so many different things you could do. Most of these tools have their own software, and most of them have a free connector. plugin via Fab that you can download. And so in this case, we're using the Rococo connector. And I'm making sure that all is well. There we go. Yep. And so what I can do, I keep undocking this for some reason. If I go to the streaming tab, I think the thing I've done here is I just have to tell it, hey, we're going to go to Unreal. We're going to activate the feed. And so now the data from Rococo is being streamed into Unreal. And I just realized I'm not wearing the suit. So I'm going to show you, I'm actually going to show you the face stuff, and then we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then I'm going to jump into the suit, and I'll do both.
Cool.
Right.
So I'll show you this. When you've got some kind of software that is pushing data, all you need to do is inside of your Unreal project, you go to your project settings, and you tell it, I'm not going to click this in front of you guys, but I'm going to show you where it is. This little button at the bottom of your project settings called UDP messaging. Hopefully it's not too small for you to see it. It's UDP messaging. When you click on that button, you are given a drop-down menu. Yeah, here we go. You're given a drop-down menu with the unicast endpoint. This is basically your IP address. I'm not going to click this because it's going to show you my IP address, and you don't want to show people that number. Online safety 101. But this usually starts off as 0000, and you might have 1 or 2 numbers in there. There's one that's like 192.168. Blah, 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 blah. That's your local address. And then there's one that's more complicated. You usually want the more complicated one. I'm going to send this over here, click my secret buttons, and then hit X and close that menu. That's all you have to do to tell Unreal, like, hey, be ready to receive some data. Other than that, you go to Window, Virtual Production, and Live Link. There's a plugin for this. You turn on the plugin, just like we turned on the MetaHuman animation plugins. And from here, you probably don't have a lot of things. I have a couple things in here already because I'm just making sure that the live demo is going to work. But usually what you do is you add a source, and you can add all kinds of stuff. You can add, your phone. If you're using LiveLink Hub, you can pull in data from other computers on your network. I'm using a laptop off screen to send some data, which I'll show you in a minute. And then we've got the MetaHuman animation sources, which, as we've mentioned before, this is where you could literally just say, I've got an audio file, and I want to push that into spatial data. And so if I say add a MetaHuman audio, you can select it. You would tell it, actually, in this case, I didn't have to use a file. I could just use my microphone. Let me just do that. Let's go. I think the one I use is this one. Yeah, go there, connect. Oh, I already did that. Oh, I just did both. Get rid of that one. Okay. So I've now just added my microphone into Unreal's MetaHuman audio system. And you can see that when I talk, blah, 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 this little thing moves. And what's cool is MetaHumans are ready for anything. If I select this character and I go to just the base blueprint, I go to the live link, I can say, hey, what are we looking for? I can click anything. In my case, I'm looking for that voice chat mic, just the audio source. And now, I guess it's also important that I tell it use live link. That's the other button you need to click. Where are you looking, and do you want to use it? And now, let me make sure. There we go. Da-da-da-da-da. Check, check. Okay. What is working? What we're experiencing here, I have so much open on my computer that my graphics card itself is like, because I've got recording software, a couple copies of Unreal. This is a very easy real-time process that I'm making look bad because of live demo, but I've prepared for this. What I'm going to do instead is remove that. And I'm just going to jump to the good stuff. You can add a MetaHuman video source. This is where you can connect your $20 webcam or your $2,000 camera or whatever you've connected to your computer. in my case, this is my capture card. This capture card allows me to, I think it's this one I want, use 2 different tracks. I'm going to this. Make sure this works. I think it's that one. Yeah. Oh, wait, wrong one. I think it's the wrong one. Yeah. Let me do this again. Human video, this one, video track. You, go. There we go. There you go. That's the camera view. That's what you can normally see of me. But what I can do is I can actually show you that this system is tracking all these different points on my face, my lips, my eyes, right? All these different things. And if you don't have an amazing webcam, that's fine. It doesn't care about resolution as much as it cares about frame rate. The more frames you can give it, the better. It also helps if you can light your scene. So don't put a window behind you, put a window in front of you. Different things like that just to make sure you're actually visible. But from here, it's pretty straightforward. I can leave on the head orientation if I want it, or I can turn off those parts and let motion capture deal with the head. I'll just leave it at all the defaults for now and just see what you get. If I take this character, select her, and this time I'll say, all right, this time use my capture card. Use live link. And let me here, maybe deselect this. And let me, real time is turned off. That's what it is. My real time viewport was turned off. Actually, it wasn't even my GPU. It was just me being dumb. So there, let me move the camera down so you can see her easier. This is real-time MetaHuman animator solving on my GPU and directing into the live link of the face. What's cool about this and what's really powerful about this particular system is many of us have, and actually let me do this so you can see. There, you can see this, right? So many of us have some kind of a phone, and you have apps on your phone that'll do facial tracking, but they use what's called ARKit. 52 blend shapes, some really standard facial deformations of like blink and open mouth and things like that. It does not support things like this. I can do this like one eyebrow raise. That is not going to show up on ARKit whatsoever. It does not happen. It doesn't work. The eyebrows, if I do this on ARKit, like every other facial tracking thing ever, what basically happens is the eyebrows just kind of go, they just kind of both average out a little bit. But here I can actually do one eyebrow. I can do this. And I can get this really extreme pose. That's really not a thing on ARKit. I can also do a sneer control. This here also is not something that you can do with regular facial tracking systems. Because it's tracking all these points of my face, I can even turn away to where it like loses me. It's trying its best. It gets the head orientation, gets my eyes. If I turn back, it'll kind of reconnect. Even if I like leave and then come back, see how quick it is to re-grab me. It's not a problem if you're like, oh no, I lost it for a second. I also just want to throw out that if we're worried about performance, which I mean, in this particular case, I'm doing everything live. But if we look at this, I go to view mode, viewport stats, FPS. I'm on one machine that has OBS and Unreal and a bunch of other stuff open. I'm rendering this whole scene with a MetaHuman with hair, live hair. See the hair is bouncing? And it's solving facial capture data, and I'm still getting between 24 and 30 FPS, which is solid.
And you are sharing your screen to 2 different apps simultaneously as well, which also adds overhead.
It's a lot. It's too much.
Yeah, we would not regard this as ideal conditions.
This is about as stress test as you get, actually.
If you want to see like, okay, like, but what if your use case is like, oh, but I want to use MetaHumans and I want to do this live and I want to get some more performance. I can do little things to optimize, you know, like I don't think this character is optimized textures. I think this is the cinematic quality. So like, that's one thing. Another thing is if we watch this little frame counter here, I can turn off things like the groom and say, oh, what does that do? I turn off the groom. That takes a lot of work away. That gives me some frames. But overall, my computer's just really struggling. Like I just got a lot going on. Let me go ahead and turn the hair back on. What you can do as well, if you have a friend or a laptop or like whatever, like this is not everybody, right? Like not everybody's gonna have two computers sitting around. But if you do have a desktop and a laptop, or you're working with another person or whatever, there is a way to have one computer do the facial data and then the other computer do like the visuals, the rendering. And that's a really, really easy process that I thought I'd just show you. This little live link window that we were using also works as essentially a standalone application called Live Link Hub. It comes built in and like installed with the engine, so you can launch that. And it's used professionally to assemble a bunch of different mocap data on whatever computer and then send the completed stream of like, I've got face from here, I've got hands from this suit, I've got a, 4 different actors and whatever. And you can just say like, all right, this set of things is one character and this set of things is another character. And I want to send that all to whatever computer is going to like show it all. So that's a cool use case. But what I can do, just to show you, is this is going to be a little bit funky, but bear with me. This is Parsec. This is my other computer. In the bottom left corner is the preview of this stream where we get an infinity mirror. On this computer, I know you won't be able to see this. It's way too small. But on the second machine, I have this little dark window. Hopefully you can see it. That is Live Link Hub. That's the same, just standalone little live. So this computer doesn't even have Unreal running. It just has Live Link Hub running. And my camera view that you've been seeing this whole time is feeding through my first computer and into that second computer. Like we said, it's a whole live streaming thing. But this computer has access to my camera. And so if I were to turn off my camera here and then disable my camera here, now you can't see me, but that's so that I can free up my camera, push it into this. I think it's that one. Boop. There we go. And that's everything you just saw in video. So there I am again, right? Hopefully you can see me down there. And I'm pushed this out of the way now. So what I'm going to do, take Vivian, take her live link subject and switch it from my local GPU. Actually, let me go ahead and put my live link back up. I'm going to take this one and delete it. So here's the one I added, delete. Now what I've got is this from Live Link Hub. This is basically my other computer sending the data to this computer, whatever. It's working. And I'll just say, select the, where is it? This one, M-Link. So this is the same thing. There we go. This is the exact same thing. Nothing has changed except that now what I've done is this camera feed is on a different computer and sending it over my local network to this character. And I don't know how much you can tell on this live stream, but I'm now sitting comfortably above 30 FPS. And I did this in a blank level. I think there's another MetaHuman actually in this scene, like over there somewhere. Oh yeah, this guy. If I delete him, yeah, it's fine. I don't need him in that. I was trying to see if that would make a difference. Well, I did this earlier and I was getting 60 FPS, but that's because now I have all the live stream stuff going. But this method gives you a nice like clean 60 with no problems because this facial solver is so fast and such a higher quality than anything else that you can do live that I've ever seen. You can do it locally with really no issues, or if you really need to rely on like high fidelity, then you can do this like multi-computer thing, because it doesn't take a lot of resources from whichever other computer. It's a thing. I thought you should see it because I've never seen this before personally.
Don't forget that if you're using an iPhone and certain Android phones as well that have an MPU or the right MPU, Android world is a bit complicated because there's so much hardware and we're still working our way through that. But with iPhones, the animation is done on the device. So with the MPU, you're basically turning the image data into animation data on the device, streaming that, which is incredibly obviously offloads the processing then onto the phone, and also is really robust because you're just streaming, ASCII data over your Wi-Fi connection or whatever. And so again, you get the same benefit there as you're talking about, just that the computer is now your phone.
Exactly. And this is where we start to get into the really good stuff with MetaHuman Animator, which I don't know if you guys will be able to see this. Well, I can probably just pull it up on my computer.
I can make you full screen too, if that's easier.
Sure, we'll try it. This here, if you can see the icon, it's a little black and white icon. It's a little head with the Unreal logo in it. Maybe.
Eh.
There it is.
There you go.
Live link face. Free app. And what it does, if you can see me, right? Move it like this so you can see. Here, I'm going to try and 1 second.
You're good.
There, maybe. None of you guys can see the screen very well. There it is. Hopefully you can see the mesh. There's a mesh on my face.
Yep.
This app is what you are expected to use with any kind of head rig. This is Rococo's head rig. It's, from what I've seen, the most affordable way to get one of these. You can also make one for about $100, which I have done before. If you buy a helmet at Walmart and you get a GoPro like pole arm thing and you duct tape that sucker really aggressively, you can make one. It's heavy and it makes it hard to perform a little bit, and naturally, but it's doable. But if you use one of these and you want to stick your phone in there, this is the app to use. And as Tony was sharing, you can set this app with different settings right here. You can set it to ARKit, which is your default basic, like lame phone settings, which every phone can do, or you can get the good stuff. You set it to MetaHuman Animator mode, and it will do the live processing of what we just saw. So if you don't want to use a webcam for some reason, or you need to be mobile and you need to move around, you can do it with your phone. But if you want the highest quality of facial animation data with the least character animation, like frame by frame expertise necessary, then what you can do is when you've set this to MetaHuman Animator, you can do this for iPhone and Android, I believe. You can put that there. You can record. You can hit the little record button, and it'll get your video, like color video data. It'll also do a depth pass depending on the camera that you're using, and it'll be able to ingest that information into Unreal. So if we can show Unreal again. I skipped over this earlier, but if we were going in here, we could go MetaHuman. We could go into the MetaHuman pop out, and you have all these different assets for capture data, or MetaHuman identity, MetaHuman performance. You have these different assets, and what that will allow you to do is to bring in those assets from your phone. And if you don't need to do it live, you can have Unreal actually process all that facial information and create a really high fidelity performance that takes full advantage of the entire baseboard that MetaHumans use. Now, I had a project to show you this cookie cuttered and like already set up, but then my hard drive crashed. And so what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to pull up one of my YouTube videos where I've done this process so that I can give you a quick example of what this looks like. So here we go. There's me. So what you can do, ahead, here we go. Like we said, MetaHuman creation. In this case, I was using an Xsens suit. I had one they were letting me borrow, which is a fancy thing. But all the stuff you've already seen is what goes through the process. you record your data, you retarget the assets. You've seen how to do all of this. It's super easy. And then you end up with, right, you have your kind of MetaHuman specific skeleton. But ultimately, when it comes to the face, this is what the MetaHuman performance asset looks like. If you wanted to create one of these, what you can do is you would right click, you would go to MetaHuman, you would go to MetaHuman performance, MHP underscore, and we could say, face data. I cannot type today. Face data. And what's great about the MetaHuman performance asset is you can choose whether you want to feed in video footage from your phone, an audio source from your computer, or if you want to just drive it straight from your webcam. Or let me rephrase that, from a file that you've recorded. So monocular footage is a video, single view footage, audio, makes sense. And then depth footage, that's the stuff that you get from your phone, depending on the phone you've got. And so if you had an audio file, you could just send in like just an MP3 or a WAV file that you have in the project. And you essentially just feed it any of your characters. So if I take Vivian, face mesh, you can see that without any specific preparation, like I haven't recorded anything specifically to use for this, but I could go like this, this over to the side. And you can see we have the faceboard in the bottom right corner for visuals. We have our visualization mesh, which is what we want to see. And then the left area is for review of our image, of whatever data we want to give it. And so I could feed it just a video of me, phone stuff. I'm going to see what I have quickest. Let me just do this. I want to make sure I have a file that is not copyright that I can do. Well, actually, what I'll just do is I'll just show you the process. That way I'm not wasting time. When you give it a file, you can see that it gives you a track at the bottom with your audio, with your depth data if you have it, with your video, and you can kind of see what the facial expressions are mapping to, right? And then you just hit process, and it's almost real time. It just goes, and it goes and it finishes, and it will allow you to export an animation sequence. I don't know why this is being slow. There we go. And if you look in the bottom left, sorry, the bottom right corner, you can even see that the faceboard is twitching around because it shows you exactly what controls are being used to map the facial expressions that you're creating. There is more to this process if you want to like dive in deep and become really good at it, but it's a very simple thing to just kind of play with. Once you have it, it's just an animation sequence. And we've already seen what to do with that. You pop your character into a level sequence and you just add the animation and it just sticks onto the face. Whether you want to go live or live motion capture, you have so many options. And then the last thing I'll do with this, and I want to make sure we have time for questions as well. I know I've been just talking and talking and talking, is you do have the ability, one of the newer features here is with LiveLink. Again, LiveLink being the application that like brings in live data and lets you put it places. You can tell it like, hey, I've got facial data from computer number 2, and I've got a body coming from Rococo software, and I've got hands coming from another thing. I mean, if you're not using the Rococo gloves. And what you can do is you can create what's called a virtual source. You can just say, hey, combine these. Just like make one virtual human with all those pieces. You just right click, or sorry, you go to add source, you go to add virtual subject, and you say, this is me. Sure. And then you go to this is me. And it lets you say, all right, what do you want to add? We want the body from this thing. We want the face from somewhere else. I don't have the live link thing turned on right now. But you would just combine whatever you want. And then that becomes a source that you can just say, all right, pick this is me. Boop. And technically, that should be working. But I don't think I have, let me see if I can get this to play. Hey! There we go. So again, I don't have my face turned on right now. And I don't have the suit on, but it does work the same. If I were wearing the suit, that's what would be showing up in the software. Right now, I'm just using a recorded take to show you the live streaming because I just haven't put the suit on yet. But you can see that if you were wearing the suit live, I'm pushing in the data here. And then whatever facial system you want to use, you just add to that little click, click, click. And you can push all that onto your MetaHuman in real time. And for the very last thing, because I've just been talking a lot,
No, it's been great content. Everybody's loving it so far.
Is if you're like, oh, that's great and all, but like, I'm doing this performance for a reason. Let's go ahead and save that. Let's record that. Like, let me not lose that. Most people have probably heard of the take recorder, which is one option, and it's probably the most common option to know of. Take recorder is a little recording window where you say, hey, I've got a character like this little blueprint. Vivian here. She's in here, and I wanna record everything she's doing. And I can just hit go. There's a little countdown, which I'm a little out of sync, but there we go. And now whatever the motion is, the facial animation, the body animation, whatever you're doing is being captured. It's being recorded. And I can go ahead and just hit stop. And that will record the playback. So this character is still being piloted live. So if I go ahead and just say, hey, stop that. No more. You're done. Stop using live link. I can now go into that recording. And you can see it's a spawnable asset. But there's that recording of the performance, separate from the one that we could still be driving live. So if I wanted to be doing both, technically, you can still do that. You could have a live person in a suit reacting and performing around the recorded performance that you did a moment ago. So you could continue to record additional people and use one person in one suit with a very small budget to build an entire crowd of people that's able to like react to each other and try to like, oh, let me help you up. Oh, no, it's okay. I won't touch you. Because obviously you don't want to get you in there. You have to do some animation cleanup. But you could have 28 different people or however many people you want, all these different metahumans turn and look at something and point and go, oh my gosh, do you see that? Don't look.
It's a subway car. No. Well, I guess it's not a subway if it's in the air, but
it's a giant Subway sandwich. Fun. But hopefully this gives you some different ideas of what you can do with these MetaHuman assets, because everything that Unreal has to offer, all these features for game development or, the film and cinematic, like the more like movie-ish features and cameras and all this kind of stuff, all the technology is built in, whether it came from MetaHuman and is given to the rest of the engine, or features that came from the engine and they work really like just perfectly flawlessly with a MetaHuman asset, like however the particular feature we're looking at happened to come to fruition. This is a core piece of how Unreal was meant to be used with these systems, that anything you want to do, it can do it, which is a very exciting, idea. It's just anything you want to do, it's ready for you.
Yeah, the fact that we were able to cover this much ground at this many features, and I mean, outside of setting up a few external software, did basically everything else in the engine. Didn't have to, travel to a bunch of other DCCs and things like that. This was all just done here. Is awesome, honestly. Did you want to try to jump into the suit? Do a couple questions at the time, or we just go to Q&A? I know we're running a little long.
I am happy to try jumping into the suit. There is one last thing I wanted to just mention to people. I don't know. I'd love to know, for everyone who's here, feel free to shout out, like, what is if my main thing that I claim to be is an animator, what is everybody else? Like, I would say primarily I'm an animator. but I'm curious what everybody else is. Because one of the most common questions I get on, in my content, I do a lot of Unreal courses and educational stuff. I have my YouTube channel, things like that. But whenever I'm doing classes or whenever I'm doing live streams on my channel, one of the questions I get is about hands, how to get really nice hand poses, especially with like motion capture. And the other is the eyes of metahumans. Because whether you're using a system like a phone or something or not, hands and eyes are the biggest questions I get. And I wanted to just give a quick, helpful tip for either of those things. When you are dealing with motion capture hands, sometimes the data is great and it just like kind of works. And other times you get these really weird gnarled poses of like, oh, the fingers are just kind of broken and weird. And like you get like a wave, but the hand is like really kind of gross. And it's just sort of the hardware you're using, or maybe you're not using a dedicated router. And there's like all kinds of reasons why it might be weird. It probably be any number of things. But there's a feature in Unreal, which if I go ahead and do this, let me grab my character and stop her from running around. In fact, let's do this. If I go to this content, I'm blind. I'm blind. I can't tell. Where am I looking? I'm looking for the animation that I recorded, and I'm not seeing it. Let me see. Window, content browser. When in doubt, retrace your steps. Take recorder. This scene 101. There you are. Where do you live? Oh, it's in the MetaHumans. Okay, great. Okay, so if I do this, I jump into my take recorder, the recorded data from motion capture, and sure enough, if I'm looking at this hand pose is not personally my favorite, but that's what came out of the motion capture live stream, right? What you can do, I showed this earlier. You can go to the body, and say, all right, let me get a control rig. Let me layer that on there, and let's add, a rig to play with this. You can absolutely do that. And I could come in here and I could animate some correctives. I could even use animation layers over here on the left side, and I could create layers for different corrections. Super handy. Haha, handy. But one thing that I would recommend more than anything else is to take advantage of the poses. There is an animation pose library tool in animation mode. Once you activate a control rig, you get these buttons over here on the left, and the poses pop out, gives you this. Now, I don't have any in this file ready to go because of my hard drive crash earlier, but what I can do is if I very, very quickly just take whatever this current pose is. Actually, this is going to work better if I don't do it with a layered control rig. Let me do this. Let me do it this way. This will make life a lot easier and faster since I know I'm going over time and I'm just continuing. Let me take this animation from before. We have this, right? We had this running where she had the the rifle that she's supposedly holding. What I can do is I'm going to take the base animation. I'm going to right click. I'm going to bake this. I'm going to bake to the control rig. Yeah, I'll do, how do you want to work? Make this even easier. Go as foolproof as I can. I guess this, I'll just do this. I'm going to take my little picker. There we go. I've got my picker. I'm going to take the right hand, boop, all the different controls on the right hand. I'm going to go to my little pose window. I'm just going to save this as like a default hand pose. I'll just say create pose. And I'll just call this default. Boop. And there it is. Default hand pose. Easy. If I want to get a little closer, I can update the thumbnail, make it easier to tell what I'm doing from afar. And then if I were to just do just like a quick adjustment here, maybe I just kind of take some of these, curl those in. This is not going to be a very good pointing pose, but let's just go with it. I take this nice mangled finger pose. This is atrocious point. It's real bad, but that's okay. If I take that hand pose and I save that, I call this point 101, because sometimes you have multiple points. New thumbnail, there we go. The thing that you can do is this. If you spend some time, whether it's with a motion capture glove or without, getting some base poses, going in, tweaking them, spend some time. This is where you front load the work. You spend a little bit of extra time creating some different poses, a fist, a point, a peace sign, pressure with your fingertips kind of against an object, flat hand, spread fingers, thumbs up. I think I said fist already. Sometimes you have like a tight fist. Sometimes you have like a grip position if you're like holding something. You start to set up these different poses that you think you might need. And what's great is when you build them once, they work for all metahumans because they share a rig, they share a skeleton. And what's cool about that is when you are dealing with this animation and you've got these characters moving around and you have these kind of weird hand poses that kind of feel dead from your motion capture solution, or if it came from Fab and it maybe didn't have hand data, what you can do is you can select your hand poses, or select your hand controls rather, and you can right click or double click to apply them, or you can select and you can drag to blend. So if you're like, oh, I've got, this point, but I want to relax the hand a little bit. So I could start with a point and I could take the default and I could blend in some default. Oops, did that a little bit weird over here. Blend in some of the point. Now, if I had more hand poses, you'd get to see more variety here. But if you have these poses that you are confident in, you're comfortable with, you're happy with, it will work across all of your metahumans. You can use these poses for any number of characters and really quickly clean up or make adjustments to whatever you're doing with their hand positions. This is really handy if you've got props. Maybe you're having your character always holding a certain rifle, or they need to pick up a staff, or they need to drink from a glass, and you want a certain hand pose for those specific things. You can leave all the rest to general capture, but when you need a good contact, or the other thing is we don't typically leave our hand. If I can go full screen for a second, we don't typically hold an object like a kindergartner with a crayon. When we take an object, especially if it's full of water or something, and I don't want to spill it, I'll adjust my finger positioning. I'm gonna use something less precarious. Battery. If I'm moving around, notice how my hand will change shape, right? I might use these two fingers. I might just do whatever. We don't hold an object like this. This you see a lot with motion capture. You see this therefore a lot with MetaHuman because people sort of just go, I can make things move. And then you just make them move. But when you're holding an object, typically there's a little bit more finesse. And if you just do a couple of poses, you can just layer that in with the pose tool. And you can do that for all of your characters when you really need it. Obviously, gameplay stuff further back, not going to be that big of a deal. But the same thing is true for the face. You can do facial poses. You can key certain expressions, whether it's just the bottom section of the mouth, maybe you want a smile. At the top, you want anger. That way you can combine, the top part of the face, anger pose, bottom part of the face, happy face. Weird. But that use of the animation tools, which are totally separate, you might be like, I'm not doing animation. But MetaHuman does. It takes advantage of those features. So if you want to use those features, pull them from the animation stuff, build a little library, use them for all of your characters, blend them here and there. That way, if one pose is really aggressive and this other character, maybe you have better stylization on and it doesn't work one-to-one, you can just blend in 40%. And you can get a lot of mileage with this character system. And that'll work a lot, especially with like brows and eyes and facial expressions and making things feel custom. So just do your little tweaks, and those tweaks go for your entire cast of characters. We can go back to Unreal, and I will answer questions.
Perfect. No, I wanted to tie back just a little bit before you asked what the viewers' roles were, job titles, or however you will. We had quite a few in here. We got some that are saying the 3D modeler. I see a couple tech artists. One here that I thought was really interesting is I'm a novelist, but trying to learn to animate scenes from their books, which is really cool.
Wow,
Some pretty,
that's cool.
yeah, some pretty cool answers here. And then this one, I I know what they mean, but it still kind of made me laugh as they just wrote, "I'm a fraud," crying face. You're not a fraud. You're learning. You're getting there. We're early into the process of learning everything.
Yeah, being that honest is a good sign. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, no, quite a few tech artists, things like that. What's interesting is I'm not seeing a ton of, at least people who are participating in chat, I'm not seeing a lot of people saying animator specifically, which to me is really interesting because that means there are people out here that are either like more looking at this from the character artist side, or people like me who are, I wouldn't consider myself an animator, but animation is one of those things that I definitely need to get better at. So something like this, I would watch as an environment artist to be like, cool, I want to learn these tools and things like that. Especially with this system, where it seems like it's a lot less demanding than maybe you might be used to if you're used to like traditional DCCs or stuff like that. For me, I haven't really done much animation since like probably early 2010s, so I'm used to it being much more of a process here. Seeing things like this really inspire me actually to jump back in because this looks so much more streamlined than the processes that I'm used to.
Yeah, I mean the animation point's a good one. We've put a lot within Unreal Engine. We're putting a lot of effort into making people not have to leave the engine to do animation work. And so with MetaHuman Animator, we asked ourselves the question, how do we originate animation using MetaHuman Animator, using faces? And then what's the downstream work you start to have to do? And so we're starting to add more tooling, working with the animation team to add more tools that work. So you're not working on a key in a frame. We were thinking about seconds and scenes of animations for characters, so you can work at that kind of scale, and that kind of requires a slightly different tool set as what we're kind of developing the tools to work across whole swathes and stuff. Some of that is landing in the audio stuff first, where there's very little inference you can take about the upper face from the audio. So how do we give sort of more general expressions, states of mind, mood that can be carried through the series of seconds, even minutes of animation in a scene, and create that visibility. So yeah, we're really starting. It's really amazing because we're starting to think about animation quite differently from the world of keyframing and trying to get some of the controls under control to a world where that's not a problem now. Actually, the systems are starting to be able to do that. You've got to start to think about directing and orchestrating the scene from an animation perspective. Do you want this more intense? Do you want those kind of emotional traits? That's really where we want to get to with people. So going back to your novelist, I'd really hope that someone like that would have a real clear eye for what they wanted to see. And it's less about the mechanics of getting it. As long as you've got the eye and you can convey the emotional element of your story, and the hope is that the tooling will meet you there, because that's ultimately what's about. We don't hide behind the tooling, get in there and be able to say, well, I want it to be, I want it to be a happier scene, or I want it to be a more aggressive scene, or I want it to work like this. That kind of creative language. So it's, and that's why we're trying to keep people in UE, because we think we've got a lot of that to do.
Yeah, no, and it's so cool and interesting to see from my perspective, right, as somebody who's used to a very different kind of animation pipeline or whatever. Like, mocap used to be extremely prohibitive. Like it was, you needed suits, you need really fancy computers, like ton of cameras hanging from ceilings and things like that. And then, we started to see things where, okay, now we're using more kind of like silhouette based stuff, and then like radar or laser oriented things like that. So it was starting to come down, but it was still, even that was kind of prohibitive, right? There was a while where you could do that sort of thing on like a certain kind of phone, but not something else or whatever. Now to the fact where it's like, do you have a webcam?
Yeah,
you can do animation. Like that is,
and
awesome.
At the moment, we're focused on the face, but we want to do that for body. We want to be able to bring, from a single view, you just want to be able to capture that performance with actors who are unencumbered, able to just perform. Don't even really know, no more intrusive than being filmed for that performance. And we want to bring all that technology to MetaHumans. I see Suede as suitably dressed.
Yes.
Just about there. All that's left
Just
is to
about
add
there.
the secret sauce of MetaHuman Animator.
Well, while you do that, it's going to be a really quick call out. We are running very well over time here, so we want to be mindful of all the people behind the scenes and everything in their time. So we won't go too much longer, but if you have any last minute questions for the team, please put them into the chat with, in brackets, question followed by the question, and we will try to lightning round a few of these if we can. We have a few that we definitely want to get to, but we've spent a vast majority of our time on this really awesome content, so I'm really excited about that. But definitely, if you have any questions, please throw them in there, and we'll see if we can lightning round through them.
There we go.
Do you need another second while you get set up, sir? Maybe take a question.
If you wouldn't mind reading it to me, I would love to answer one.
Okay, well, we got a couple of them. Some of them are very MetaHuman specific, so maybe we'll do a couple of those while you're getting set up there. One of them that we have here is, why does the process of assembly ignore all weight painting fixes made in the MetaHuman wardrobe asset? So this is probably,
this kind of does. What happens in assembly is it rederives the weights from the body at runtime, and so the wardrobe weights get overwritten, so that can be an issue for people. The weights can be fixed, done in post by just updating the scale mesh, and the skin weights can be updated using the painting in the scale mesh editor, and you can do that in UE now. So that's the way around that.
Yep. This one also feels like a pretty quick answer, so I'll throw this real quick at you. Is, on the topic of materials, what led to the decision of having textures baked once the MetaHuman is assembled? I assume for optimization purposes?
Yeah, exactly right. It's for optimization purposes. It's worth knowing that coming up very soon, you'll be able to select to have unbaked textures, and you'll be able to fertile with those, do your thing, create whatever it is you're going to create, and also MetaHuman Creator will respect those, and you'll see them in the creation process. So you can do you with materials next.
This one's an interesting one. Just came in last here on Twitch. Is, what is a recommended hardware setup to fully jump into this area of development?
Wow. Recommended depends. What's your budget? What you're trying to achieve?
Maybe minimum minimum viable product sort of answer.
Yeah. I mean, as Sir shown, you can do this with a webcam. I've done it with a laptop and a webcam facial. Also with the what we call the off actor, where the camera is fixed and the actor's moving. You do get some head and neck motion. So if you're doing just an upper body, a very tight upper body shot, you don't necessarily need any further mocap to get the moving head, because dead heads never really work. So you get a level of a couple of axes there of animation there. But beyond that, I think the kind of thing that there's online solutions for markerless mocap using, Move AI, companies like that, all have technologies that are available there. I think, and that tends to be the cheapest, because you do some capture and you just pay per processing, something like that. I think there's even some free solutions like OpenPose. I think there's kind of free solutions like that you can use. And then there's the kind of stuff that Suwade's going to be using here. He's got a Rococo suit, the IMU suits where you put those on. They tend to be $1,000 in that kind of market. So you're paying some money here, but the results are better. And then you're into sort of optical mocap systems, and you can pay you pay a lot of money for an optical mocap system kind of thing. So There's a range.
Awesome.
What?
How we
I
doing?
want to add. Doing good. I've got
Great.
basically everything except that you can see that my head is broken. And I just wanted to throw out, this is a really easy thing to miss, that when you are doing, I think this was just mentioned a minute ago, when you are doing MetaHuman Animator with the face, it supports head data like in itself. And if you're doing that with a combination of motion capture, you want to go into the actual like live link face stuff. You want to turn all the head settings off. That way you don't have multiple transforms.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
There we go.
Hey,
there it is.
Look at that.
So despite being in a live, I'm going to put the microphone like into my little headband here. This was done live. This suit had its battery dead when I went over to grab it. I grabbed a new battery, had to reconnect the suit. I've got finger data. I've got body data. I've got MetaHuman animator face data, and I can prove that because I can do a single eyebrow raise, which you can't do otherwise. And this whole thing was done live while you were answering questions, just to point out that like, this is very, I mean, you can have troubleshooting that like makes it hard, but in theory, this can be a very easy process that anybody can do it. Yay.
So much fun. So much fun. Well, we appreciate you for putting this all together and putting that suit on at the very last second to demonstrate this. It's super cool. I love to see these kinds of things and see how easy it is. I mean, we've been going for about 2 hours 20 minutes, whatever. And not only have you been able to instruct through all of this pipeline, but you've also just generally been able to do most of this pipeline in that period of time, which is remarkable, honestly.
And did we have a crash? Did you crash? I don't think we had a crash, did we? Does anyone even believe this is real?
Yeah, right. Oh, absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Well, thank you so much. We're gonna switch back. Is there anything else you wanted to cover real quick before I switch to the fun talking heads view?
No.
If anybody
do the Q&A with that suit on.
I'm happy.
Great.
I just wanted to throw out that if anyone's like, wow, this was great, I want more from this guy, I have a YouTube channel.
Yes.
And I do podcasts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, what's your channel?
My channel is my name. So if you were to go to YouTube, not now, stay here for Q&A. But if you were to go to, this is how you spell my name, or Wade Neistat, and have a bunch of fun animation videos.
If you copy that URL real quick, sir, and throw that into the chat, I will, or throw that into a Zoom, I will throw that into the chat for everybody to click on.
Happily. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, no worries. Get that thrown over here in just a second.
There we go.
Great.
I put a 0 in there.
No worries. I can copy without it. I'll throw that into YouTube real quick, as well as this.
Man, I will be at Unreal Fest. I'm giving a lab on animation workflows this year at Unreal Fest. So if anybody's there, come say hi.
Perfect. And last one. Great. There we go. Well, thank you both so much for joining us. I do have 2 questions that we will end on really briefly here, but I just wanted to thank you for coming on and staying a little bit longer, and sir, for putting this presentation together. Absolutely incredible amount of work covered, amount of topics and info covered in that period of time. So absolutely appreciate it there. We have the last 2 that I'll throw you. One is kind of more directed maybe towards sir, but Tony, I'd also be curious for your answer here. For somebody who's just watched this live stream and like, great, I'm sold, I want to jump in. Any other tips, advice, resources that you might recommend that they dabble into as they kind of jump into this?
I would say, I mean, Sir's got his answer. I would say make best use you can of Epic's resources, but YouTubers like Sir Wade we kind of we put out a lot of our own tutorials and videos, and then these guys come along and say it all in 4 minutes, and we take an hour. So it's just, sometimes people are just really good. People are just so good at explaining that stuff. So I would really leverage that and engage with the community generally. Our forums, we read the forums. We don't always respond to stuff because, like I said, we're a small team, but the forums, the documentation that we have is always improving. We put a lot of effort into the community work. So all that kind of stuff I think is important. And also using Fab, using the resources, the projects on Fab, and just don't worry, just give it a go and get your hands dirty.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to reverse engineer some stuff too. You can find some really cool projects that might be a little intimidating to look at, in whole, but starting from specific parts and kind of working your way back can be very, very helpful.
100%. I would echo a lot of that. The best way to learn this is to kind of play with it and break stuff. It can be hard if you've never done it before and you're like, I don't know where to even start playing. Download some sample projects. Just find some tutorial that looks interesting and follow it, even if it's not exactly what you want to do. Learning by little pieces of tutorials, you'll start to figure out where to put them together, whether it's mine, whether it's other people's. There's so many great resources on this kind of stuff. And so just find the things that interest you and pursue those little breadcrumbs, go down the rabbit holes, and then eventually you'll find that you're like, wow, I actually know how to do a fair amount of things. Oh, kind of all of us learn.
I think if I had one thing, I would say stop worrying about the right way to do it and find a way to do it. Because I find that people get really paralyzed by, oh, am I doing this correct? Did it work? Did you get a good outcome? Then it was fine. Yes, you can get into some messes down the line, but frankly, those are the things that are going to teach you. So, don't stop worrying about what's perfect and make stuff that just is good.
Yeah. There's definitely best practices in certain instances, but there's very rarely this is the one way to do the thing. There's many different ways that you can do stuff. I mean, just the folks that we had on yesterday were a really cool example of that, where the systems that they set up were primarily handled in sequencer for quite a robust system, which is maybe not typical for the kind of system that they were going for, but that was the workflow that worked for them. That gave them the result they were looking for, and it worked. So that is their right answer, right? It may not be the right answer for you if you prefer scripting and blueprinting and things like that, but if you do prefer that kind of visual timeline style thing, then that's the right way for you. Awesome. Last one that we'll throw at you, and this one might actually be maybe a little bit more towards Tony, but feel free for both of you all to take this one. It was actually one of the first questions we got is, how do I just make the MetaHuman look a little bit better? When you throw it into the scene, it's just kind of in that A pose. Maybe it doesn't have the most interesting lighting or anything like that. It doesn't maybe look as nice as you expect, especially in that, and MetaHuman creator part. What are the best ways to kind of maximize the visual look for those sorts of characters?
Oh my! This is such a loaded question. So usually people say, well, they don't look real, do they? And it's like, yeah. So how do you close that gap? They can. I mean, one of the first things to understand about MetaHuman is that it is a real-time technology. So there's compromises that you need to make all the way of how you're going to deliver that performance. And we did a thing a little while ago now called Blue Dot, which was a piece of one actor in a performance. It was a digital twin of that actor, and we kind of threw everything at it. We did everything we can to make that character, use a machine learning rig, which has a lot more fidelity in the face. It was a heavily scanned version of that actor, and we took that performance and we labored over generating that. And the purpose of that was to give you that, this is, the best looking MetaHuman that we've made. I mean, if you can look at companies like Kojima who make very good looking MetaHumans. Lots of companies can do this, but this was one that we knew inside out how it had been done. And so I think that is pretty close to indistinguishable from a real person. You can tell the difference, but it takes a few seconds and a few glances. There's scenes where that works. So, and that's a real time. That runs in real time. That was the other constraint we had on that. You had to be able to run this in real time. And a lot of what we all kind of knew and was really reinforced by that is it's not necessarily the MetaHuman. It's the lighting. It's the subtleties of the scene, the reflections, the gameplay, even the constraints that all the artistry, which is really difficult to unpinch. Lighting, framing a MetaHuman is hard. Anyone who's done any photography, you get these images back sometimes that it's not what I saw. It's not what was in my head. It's not that, and it's that gap. It's just as hard with MetaHuman. So it's not necessarily intrinsic to the MetaHumans. It relies on a lot of understanding of the skin anatomy, the pores, and the way things work. Movement is important. As Suwaid's been saying, the subtleties of the motion can trigger. All the errors in that can really trigger things in your brain. One of the reasons that we ultimately MetaHuman is intended to cover a wide space of character types. We started with realistic digital humans because it's hard. It's probably the hardest problem. We've evolved brains to seek out every error in realistic looking people. And so that's the problem we gave ourselves. And we've not finished yet. We know we've got to get to the point where people can't tell the difference. But all the time it's teaching us, how to embody something real and genuine and authentic in a character, and we then are able to carry that into a wide range of characters, goblins, whatever else people want to create. We want those to be MetaHuman. So, a long-winded way of saying, in terms of solving that balance, I think it's as much to do with the scene, the lighting, and all the things you're doing around the character that help bring that character to life. We've released, improvements to our skin textures, to our synthesis database. Some of it is numbers. Some of it is actually the higher the resolution, the more information you get there. And like I said, it's a real-time system, so you're always playing off constraints. The fidelity versus the performance is always a big factor of that, and that's something that always kind of we're dealing with. So yeah, it's a complex question.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's like out of the box, you can only really go so far from that because there's so many variables in so many different situations, right? Like if you take a MetaHuman, you could make them look extremely well in certain lighting and then kind of make them look flat and boring in other lighting. There's a lot of different things there. So if you're just slapping it right out into the scene, it might not have all the cool lighting and features and animations and little details that you might expect that really sell it to you. So it's a very strong foundation, but it's not the end point.
Yeah, and I think it's very true. And this is going back to something we said earlier. Is this is one of the reasons why I keep banging on about lighting, but it is so important, and it is so difficult actually lighting. And it's one of the reasons why we're adding this capability to bring your lighting scene into MetaHuman Creator, because I get this question a lot. It's like, well, they look great in the scene, and then I drop them in and they're falling apart. So I think you do both. What we've always said to people is you can get our lighting scenes, you can download them from Fab, but you can just pull them out of and you can put the MetaHuman that you've created in that scene outside of MetaHuman Creator to confirm that, oh yeah, it looks the same. And then now you'll be able to bring your lighting scene into MetaHuman Creator, and hopefully those two things will get you to learn, what is it about what I'm doing wrong with the lighting and the setup. It looks good in here, it looks bad in here. Lighting is a big part of it.
Now, lighting goes a long way. When I was a course director forever back, the one thing that I would say to folks is like lighting is literally everything, because without it you don't see. So like it is everything about it. Like all the work that we do with materials, the modeling that we do to get shape and silhouette and stuff like that, that's all just to direct how the light then goes into your eyes. So you can make something look amazing with some good lighting, and you make something that looks amazing on its own look even worse like than it would otherwise if the lighting isn't quite as nice. So
I've seen things where I think, oh, the lighting's really good, and then a lighting artist spends time on it, and I think, Why is that better? What did you do? What black art did you do? It's just, yes, now it looks much better. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you again, folks, so much for coming on. And thank you, everybody, for watching and all your time and questions. I'm sorry that we weren't able to get to all of them. We had a lot of content to cover here, and I wanted to prioritize being able to get through all that content because it was so good, so well put together. Thank you again, sir. For so much for coming on and doing this and putting this all together. I know it was not a little undertaking, so we really appreciate it.
Anytime. Happy to
Fantastic. Cheers, guys.
Awesome, awesome. So with that, that is going to wrap up today's episode of Inside Unreal. Again, huge thank you to our wonderful guest today, and huge thank you to you all for watching as well. The show wouldn't be what it is without you, your questions, and your time. And if any of you came partway through the stream and wanted to rewatch a section, no worries. We post all of our streams in video format that can be viewed on demand on both our Twitch and YouTube channel at Unreal Engine. You can keep up with the latest news, shoutouts, and other cool information on our socials at Unreal Engine. And if you haven't already, please come join us on the Epic developer community, where we have documentation, tutorials, both from the community and Epic staff alike, forums, and much more. And lastly, this is all part in celebration of our Indie Games Week 2026 that we're doing this week, and we still have yet another live stream for you coming tomorrow, so please check that out. It's going to be a very fun one. We're definitely looking forward to it, but all the other streams that we've done are also available to view in that VOD format, so please check them out. We had a really great one. We've had, honestly, all these have been really, really great, so please check them out. They were super cool, very informative, and we think that you'll really enjoy them. But with that, thank you so much again to the team. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you again tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.